What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 6 Knots Chapter 111, Kushina. Uzumaki Kushina heard someone calling her name in a daze. Familiar and exhausted, she opened her eyes and saw Namikaze Minato, who was covered in blood. Kushina looked startled. Is she dreaming? But she quickly remembered what happened. Someone pretended to be Haruki and poisoned her. How are you? Kushina got up quickly and noticed the 3 bodies lying around. They are wearing rain shinobi village clothes, 2 jonin and 1 chunin. You killed? Minato tucked up the golden bangs and smiled. It's a fluke. Why not wait for Makoto? Are you usually smart? Kushina was a little annoyed, and patted his shoulder once, and said, 1 dozen 3, what can you do? Seeing that you are in danger, didn't hold back. Minato scratched his head embarrassedly. Although he knew that Haruki was nearby, he still chose to take risks. Kushina was startled slightly. She looked at Minato. The summer sun shone on his blonde hair. Cooperate with Ruoiro's smile. Still pretty handsome. It was this embarrassed expression, stupid. Kushina couldn't help but chuckle. It seems that the sakura flower that blooms suddenly in spring, in the evening breeze, is like a colorful haze, bright and moving. Minato was stunned. Fool, come back to mind. Kushina waved in front of his eyes. The top priority is to find Makoto and treat you. Oh, okay. Minato struggled to get up. How about you? Give me your hand. Kushina glared at him, holding his arm, and using her body to help him walk. Minato's heart beats violently. It was the first time he was so close to Kushina, so close that he could hear her breathing and smell the fragrance of her red hair. What's wrong? Is it uncomfortable? It's okay. Minato shook his head quickly, for fear that she was worried about herself. How was your calm before? Kushina was amused by his nervous and formal appearance. Minato hesitated, not knowing how to answer. If you can learn the tricks of Mr. Haruki, you won't be speechless. Kushina noticed his sudden loss of expression and smiled, but, I kind of like the way you look now. Huh? Minato didn't react for a moment. Do you know the direction of Makoto? Kushina did not say any more, asking about Makoto. Here. Minato was a little disappointed, but he still showed his way. The two of them were quiet again. Kushina didn't speak, and Minato didn't know what to say. But walking side by side like this is also very good. So much so that he forgot the pain in his body. He reluctantly let go of Kushina until he saw Haruki and Makoto. But what makes Minato strange is that the scene in front of him is too harmonious. Teacher? Seeing Haruki, Kushina suddenly showed a surprised expression. Just as Minato showed an expression of envy, Kushina took his hand to Haruki and said, Teacher, help this guy heal. Minato's body suddenly stiffened. Sweat appeared on the palm of the left hand held. The wood clone that Haruki was tracking them had already seen the scene where the Minato hero saves the United States. The reason why it didn't show up was naturally because he didn't want to spoil the atmosphere. Green chakra appeared in his hands, wandering around the wound on Minato's body, and healed after a while. Call. Kushina sighed, let go of Minato's left hand, and said, Fortunately, the teacher came in time. Minato gradually recovered, hearing her words, looked at Haruki. He did not tell Kushina the truth. But Makoto should have known it. His eyes touched Makoto's and he suddenly trembled. He felt a cold and huge chakra. Is this what the teacher said about Mangekyo Sharingan? This feeling of danger is faster than that of Master Third Hokage. Minato, when we get to the metropolis of the country of fire, let's talk about it. Makoto's tone was colder than usual. Minato smiled suddenly. Why not find a teacher? He is the principal culprit. Injustice, it is injustice. The team members can learn from each other until the point is reached. Haruki patted him on the shoulder and said, Go and change clothes. Okay. Minato heard Haruki's implication. Being an apprentice is really hard. He went to a secluded place to change into the ripped ninja clothes, and within a minute, he returned to the team. Haruki has begun to make a barbecue. Stringing the little white rabbit caught by Makoto and staring at the fire, she couldn't help but think of Mangekyo Sharingan's ability. The left eye, similar to the weakened version of Izanagi, is the mutual transformation of illusion and reality, and is called Ifu Yuzaka. The right eye, which can neutralize any pupil technique of the same level and low level, is called Huang Quanjin. Mangekyo Sharingan's pupil technique is a portrayal of the soul of the eye-opener. Makoto witnessed the tragic encounter of the Uchiha family under Uchiha Itachi pupil technique in the illusion, so he wanted to erase his pupil technique and awakened Huang Quanjin. Haruki deceived her twice, causing her to have doubts about reality and illusion. She wanted to see clearly with the master, so Ifu Yuzaka was born. Yifu Yeban corresponds to the fictional road to Wangchen in the Neon mythology, namely Wangchen Bilyangban, but it is a place name that exists in reality, meaning the transformation of reality and reality. Huang Quanjin is another name for Izanami. She is the mother god in Neon mythology and the goddess of Wangchen filth, representing the highest power. Of course, although Mangekyo Sharingan's abilities are powerful, its flaws are not small. According to Makoto's statement, The two pupil techniques have caused a great burden on her, and they belong to the forbidden technique that cannot be used frequently. As for the specific situation, Haruki did not let Makoto explain. After all, once it is known, it will become a fatal weakness. To be honest, Haruki was also a little surprised. But there is no doubt that her Mangekyo Sharingan is the nemesis of the Uchiha clan. He can imagine that the future Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Sasuke may not be able to fight back when facing their mother. Kushina glanced at him suspiciously, but didn't ask anything more. Minato shook his head. It was clearly himself who was going to have the accident. Unexpectedly, his two actions created another pupil technique of Makoto. Haruki observed Minato and Kushina, and he was basically sure that the relationship between the two was about to become clear. Nothing. What can I do? Tour the mountains and water all the way. Makoto's mood also returned to normal, but the discussion with Minato was not cancelled. Kushina looked at the two, always feeling that the atmosphere was a bit wrong. She pulled Minato's sleeve, and asked in a low voice, "Do you know what happened?" After a pause, Makoto ate in silence. After lunch, Haruki led the three of them and set off for the metropolis of the Country of Fire. The three people in front of her are the most important people in her life, and she believes that they will not harm herself. For those who don't understand, it's the first time to kill. Haruki handed the roasted rabbit meat to Makoto first. Here, Makoto. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. She still had some resentment towards Haruki. 112 Senju Guanyin. As one of the most prosperous towns in the ninja world, the metropolis of Fire Country is also the most extensive. Haruki saw the outline of the metropolis from a distance, on the plain, like a sleeping lion. Teacher, someone. Uchiha Makoto turned on 3 Tomo Sharingan and said lightly, "The 3 Jonin and a group of samurai should be sent by the Fire Country daimyo to greet us." I notified it. Haruki nodded. It was the first time for the 4 of them to come to Metropolis. I am not familiar with the road, and I can't find the palace of the daimyo. But he did not expect so many people to come. Is it to pay attention to one's own group, or to disarm it? Soon, this group of people arrived in front of the 4. The leading ninja, with a bald head, wearing the robes, and a fire-shaped cloth belt on his waist. Land and land. Haruki's first reaction was the abbot of Fire Temple, the abbot of Jilu, one of the 12 ninja guards in the original work. But he and Sarutobi Asuma should be the same year. It can't be this age, so this one may be a teacher or a father or something. I have seen you all in the air. Jakam scanned the 4 people in a circle. His eyes finally fell on Haruki. He said politely, "Welcome to Haruki-sama." Although he is the guardian of the 12 ninjas, Haruki's status is higher than him. The husband of Princess Tsunade alone has to be respected. Haruki was a little surprised. This attitude doesn't seem to be a fault. He remembered the original story about the 12 guardians of ninja. They were divided into 2 factions due to internal conflicts. The steady group headed by Sarutobi Asuma is also known as the Film Saver Group. The radicals headed by Hama believe that Hokage should not exist and that power should be given to the daimyo. But the result can be imagined. Even the sun and the sun were directly raised. Apart from letting the animation water for a few episodes, it has no effect at all. However, the Temple of Fire should belong to the conservative school. Under the leadership of Daikong, the 4 met the daimyo. When Haruki and daimyo were greeting each other, he noticed that Minato had been found in the sky. Seeing Haruki's movements, the daimyo also discovered the situation outside the palace along the way. He explained, "I believe that you chose the ninja, but Chisora said he wanted to try his skills." "It's okay." Haruki waved his hand. He remembered that Jilu was the strongest host of the Temple of Fire, but it was also as good as Sarutobi Asuma. As for the ground and air, let alone. If Minato can't even beat him, he won't be able to become the 4th Hokage. It seems you have confidence in him. The daimyo unfolded the paper fan and watched the duel outside the door with great interest. Minato and earth and space are in opposition to each other. A few seconds later, the ground-to-air raid advanced attack. His body instantly appeared in front of Minato, and Chakra wrapped his fists and slammed them down. Minato jumped back immediately. He was judged to be a ninja with partial body art. He quickly pulled out his shuriken, forming a dazzling offensive, like a black rain curtain covering the ground. The response to the ground and air is simple and rude. The 2 fists opened the bow one after another. Fist shadows, with the howling wind, knocked the shuriken into the air. Minato smiled slightly. The body suddenly appeared above him, and Rasengan's right hand spun rapidly. Earth Kong's expression was startled, and he hadn't expected such an attack at all. To be honest, if you don't understand Flying Thunder God technique, it will be quite difficult to deal with it. But to Minato's surprise, his Rasengan didn't work. Was blocked by a golden Senju Guanyin. The source is the ground and the air. In the next moment, Senju Guanyin's compassionate face showed anger, and his body turned blood red. Minato sensed the danger, disappeared in front of him with the help of Flying Thunder God technique. However, countless red fists suddenly appeared in the same place, slammed into the air, and a series of vibrations sounded. Minato's figure flashed again. Red fists were flying all over the sky, chasing after him reluctantly. Minato's brows wrinkled slightly, relying on flying thunder god technique. Few people in the ninja world can match his speed. But he knew that blindly dodging couldn't convince Earth Kong. Thinking of this, he nodded his hands, and a dozen clones appeared in the blink of an eye. Minato noticed that Senju Guanyin is not the real Senju, and its attacks have gaps. The avatars threw their shurikens one after another, while avoiding their fists at extremely fast speed, rushing towards the ground. Bang bang bang. The closer to the ground, the more intense the attack. Minato's clones disappeared. Suddenly, D. Kong's eyes condensed, and not only the clone, but also Minato were gone. At the next moment, his body stiffened. Feel the cold blade appearing on the neck. As expected of golden glitter. Lost in the air for a few seconds, he dispersed Senju Guanyin, his hands clasped together. It was I who lost, and the 12 guardian ninjas were joined by your lord, and the prestige was even greater than before. Recognize. Minato put away his shuriken, stepped back, and made the seal of reconciliation. After the discussion was over, Haruki withdrew his gaze. The Senju Guanyin in the sky reminded him of Shinsu Senju in wood style. Of course the gap is quite large. Senju Hashirama's Guanyin body is comparable to 10 tails, and can hold 9 tails with one hand. The ninjutsu of the earth and the sky originated from the Temple of Fire, known as Lying Senju, the so-called talent of the fairy clan. Since it is a fairy clan, it may be related to the unknown romantic past of Sage of Six Paths. Haruki's thoughts flowed for an instant, and he looked at the opposite daimyo. Da Ming, what do you think? It's so fast that it's dizzying. The daimyo sighed. After learning that Haruki had sent his apprentice, he investigated Minato and found out his record. But hearing is fictitious, seeing is believing. The strength of the earth and air, in his opinion, belongs to the outstanding one among Jonin. But in the face of Minato's speed, there is quite a feeling of powerlessness. Dizora is the strongest ninja among the 12 guardian ninjas. Since he agrees with the strength of Namikaze Minato, naturally there is no big problem. Those who are afraid of Konoha, those who are disdainful of Konoha, and those who don't care about Konoha. Every year there are various assassins, 3 distinct camps. Of course it can. More exaggerated than the previous ones in Konoha Akihabara. The stronger Namikaze Minato is, the happier he feels. At the same time, Haruki also had a face-to-face with the civil and military officials of the Land of Fire. Although he didn't remember a few names, he clearly noticed their attitude. After that, Haruki saw the luxurious dinner of a big dog family. Observe the people among the hundreds of civil and military officials who may become members of their Sha organization, especially those who have real materials but can't be displayed. Haruki therefore assigned an additional task to Minato. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. The daimyo nodded in agreement without doubting him. The daimyo shook the paper fan and said with a smile on his face, from today onwards, Namikaze Minato is one of the guardians of Shinobu and the instructor of the Fire Nation new army. Besides, there is one more thing. As a daimyo, too many people want him to die. As for the weapons of the new army, Skyfire, due to the high production cost and difficulty, I suggest that the better soldiers in the new army should be selected first. Haruki also laughed. He looked at Da Ming and felt more and more like a beckoning cat, and he almost engraved the 6 words, "People stupid and money come quickly," on his face. Only the Manchu banquet he saw in previous movies and TV shows can surpass it. Chapter 113 New military training. After breakfast the next day, Haruki's long-awaited show is about to be staged. Uchiha Mikoto vs Namikaze Minato. However, to his disappointment, Mikoto did not use Mangekyo Sharingan's abilities. Haruki glanced at Uzumaki Kushina, who didn't know who to cheer next. He suspected that she had said something to Mikoto last night. Mikoto, who should have been angrily, completely returned to his usual appearance. Otherwise, how could it be so harmonious? But what's the point of not beating Minato as expected by Mikoto? Haruki sighed. He had long been tired of the normal exchanges between the two of them. Even though Mikoto has been greatly improved because of Mangekyo Sharingan and Chakra, Minato's flying Thunder God technique is too pervert. Uchiha's fire style and ninja throwing are not a threat to him. As a result, the ground-to-air battle against Minato is similar to yesterday's. Obviously Minato might be cold when he touched him, but he couldn't touch him. Instead, with his fighting ability, taking advantage of the gap between ninjutsu's seal and release, he rubbed out Rasengan, which was unpredictable. The match ended with the exhaustion of Minato's chakra. Haruki was not very surprised. The best strength of a ninja should be around 20 years old. At this time, whether it is the function of the body, the reserves of chakra, or the combat experience in ninjutsu, they are all at their peak. And Minato is far from reaching this age. Minato, how do you feel? Haruki glanced at Minato, who was panting, and then at Mikoto, who was calm. My actions are invisible in front of her Sharingan. Minato recalled the previous battle scene and said with lingering fear. Although Mikoto used to be able to keep up with his speed, it is not as exaggerated as it is today. If it weren't for flying Thunder God technique, his attack would be very difficult to work. Haruki nodded slightly. Sharingan is such a rascal. Hokage ninja, also known as Eye ninja, is not unreasonable. Let's go to the barracks. Haruki made the seal casually, and the light green medical ninjutsu fell on Minato, alleviating his fatigue. Thank you, teacher. Minato breathed a sigh of relief and patted the dust on his clothes. Soon he reacted again, and the culprit in his study today was Haruki. Humph, what thanks? Haruki didn't know what his apprentice was thinking. He randomly found a guard in the palace and led them to the outskirts of the metropolis. A huge barracks surrounded by tall wooden fences. According to the daimyo, he enlisted 10,000 civilians. But when Haruki saw them, he was a little disappointed. The clothes can be considered complete, but the physical fitness varies. Tall, short, fat and thin, everything is complete. Of course, more people are undernourished and lean. Haruki knew that the number of standing troops in the Land of Fire is not large, after all, it consumes a lot of money. The vast majority of the army is half plowing and half warfare. They plow the fields in peacetime and assemble during wars to give them simple equipment and serve as cannon fodder. Forming a new army, the daimyo is naturally reluctant to donate a well-trained standing army to Minato. Haruki had expected it, and soon picked up his mood. The people's army naturally comes from the people. Haruki scanned them. Most of the expressions are panic. Military service in the feudal era often meant life or death. Can't go home for a few years, more than 10 years. Haruki didn't give a chicken-blooded speech. There is no need, and they do not understand. Perhaps none of the 10,000 people in front of them have received a formal education, and it is already rare to be able to understand Chinese characters. Minato. Haruki stepped back and let Minato take care of it. These people finally realized that Minato was their instructor or commander, and there was a riot. Because Minato is really young, in their view, it is just a child. But Minato didn't say anything, and directly performed the great fireball and hand-rubbed the storm. So the square became quiet again, and no one opposed it. Minato remembered what Haruki said, and started his first thing. Prepared by. According to the standard of 10 people in a class, 30 people in a row, 100 people in a company, 300 people in a battalion, 1,000 people in a regiment, 3,000 people in a brigade, and 10,000 people in a division, everyone is subdivided. This matter alone took 2 days, mainly it is troublesome to elect officers. Fortunately, Makoto helped a lot. Her Sharingan's direct control can reveal all the deepest thoughts in this person's heart. In the end, he reluctantly selected some guys with more suitable personalities. And the second thing is to line up and practice military posture. In the face of strange training that had never been done before, everyone was not very motivated. Minato's strategy is also very simple. Those who successfully complete the training will receive higher food benefits. This strategy is quite effective for civilians who can hardly get enough to eat. It has to be said that platoon training has an excellent effect on obedience exercises. In just 1 week, it looks like something. Just like the military training of Haruki University in his previous life. Thinking of this, Haruki ordered them to carry out recreational activities at night, taught them to sing and dance, and cultivate the feelings between teammates. Although most people behave badly, their spirits are completely different. They have hope. Haruki saw that the training of the new army was on the right track and was ready to leave. Before leaving, tell Minato one last thing. Let him select a group of people to use as Skyfire users. But there is only one standard with a certain degree of red thinking. As for how to teach, it depends on Minato's ability. Afterwards, Haruki and Makoto returned to Konoha. Kushina stayed in the metropolis of the Country of Fire, and the reason given was that she wanted to play for a few more days. When Minato heard these words, he patted his chest to ensure that Kushina would be safely sent back. Haruki can only say that being young is great. Anyway, Kushina has her own diamond kunai, which can be triggered once she is in danger of her life. I want to compete with Fugaku again. At the intersection of Konoha Street, Makoto stopped Haruki who was about to leave and said, "Teacher, stay. Do you want to use Mangekyo Sharingan?" Haruki stopped and became interested. Well, taking advantage of Fugaku's not being too much influenced by the radicals, I intend to let him learn more about the theory taught by the teacher. Makoto looked serious. She wanted to do this a long time ago, but she was not strong enough to convince Fugaku. Also, Haruki thought of her saying that her ability was a huge burden, and it happened that he could see the side effects. If it is too serious, she must be restricted from use. By the way, transplant Senju Hashirama's cells for her. But it can only slow down the progress of the blind. Want to solve this problem once and for all, only Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. But the two people who have these eyes in the original work. Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Sasuke. Their evolutionary path is the same, transplanting brother Mangekyo Sharingan. However, Makoto has no siblings. Haruki suddenly thought of Uchiha Fugaku. Is it possible between husband and wife? Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 114 Sharingan Nemesis Haruki and Uchiha Makoto came to the street where the Uchiha clan was. It was already afternoon. As the two of them, the Uchiha people they met greeted them one after another. Haruki responded with a smile. The reason for the rebellion of the Uchiha clan in the original work, in addition to their own personalities, is mainly because Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo pressed too hard. After the Nine Tails turmoil, it would be too straightforward for Uchiha to relocate. Tell them clearly, suspecting them to be the murderers of the Nine Tails chaos. Other villagers will certainly have such thoughts. With the pride of the Uchiha clan, no, it's normal to be an ordinary ninja and suffer from the strange eyes of everyone every day. Except for the protagonist like Uzumaki Naruto, how to say. Haruki felt that if the Nine Tails chaos Uchiha Fugaku was bold enough, he should desperately protect 4th Hokage Namikaze Minato. Or there can be a turnaround. While Minato dragged Uchiha Obito, Uchiha Fugaku controlled Nine Tails or tried to delay time. With his strength, he can definitely do it. As long as Minato does not die, and he has the merits of King Kyuin, Uchiha will not be reduced to the level of annihilation. However, perhaps because of Kishimoto's intention, the Uchiha clan has hardly ever produced talents with political acumen. Makoto, Haruki-sama. Fugaku saw Makoto smile and bowed slightly to Haruki. In the clan, the only girl he liked was Makoto, who even respected Haruki more and more. Because he could see that Haruki had a higher status in Makoto's heart. Although he couldn't understand why a medical ninja teacher could make Makoto treat this way. Could it be a life-saving grace? Fugaku retracted his thoughts and suddenly heard Makoto's request for discussion, and he was a little confused. The two of them often played against each other, but Haruki never saw it face to face. Could it be that Makoto asked Haruki to come over and test himself? Fugaku thought of this possibility and agreed with a smile. Haruki retreated to the edge, waiting for the good show. Makoto calmly formed the seal of opposition. The doubt in Fugaku's eyes flashed. Makoto's expression is usually very serious and solemn in the usual discussions, and it is impossible to be as relaxed and ignorant as it is now. But he didn't have time to think about it. The three-gold jade appeared in his eyes. He knew Makoto's strength very well, so he skipped the probing stage and started using Sharingan. However, in the next moment, his body couldn't help but shake, and the three-gold jade in his eyes seemed to be upside down, restoring his calm. Fugaku was startled slightly, and the surrounding environment changed. He is on a sailboat. The blue sky was reflected in the river. Illusion? Have you been in illusion? How can it be? Fugaku frowned, all his pupils rushing to his eyes. The illusion of the Uchiha clan is almost based on Sharingan, so the civil war means the confrontation of pupil power. In the original work, Uchiha Sasuke relied on the curse seal to strengthen his pupils and used Sharingan to crack Tsukuyomi. After a few seconds, Fugaku covered his eyes and couldn't help making a painful noise. In the past, he was able to directly solve the illusion with Sharingan. But he cannot open Sharingan. Tongli met an obstacle. No matter how he crashed, it was of no use. It was as if there was some power that had fundamentally dismantled all his pupil skills. It's a fantasy. He has never met or heard of such outrageous things. Haruki outside blinked. Has it started? No, it's over. He saw the moment Fugaku's opposing seal dissipated, and he stood there like a puppet without moving at all. In other words, a spike. The current Uchiha clan, except for Uchiha Madara, Fugaku is almost the top Jonin. But it still takes less than a second in Makoto's hands. The proud Sharingan of the Uchiha clan was useless, and his combat power was almost cut by 2/3. Haruki felt that he had underestimated Makoto Mangekyo Sharingan's abilities. Makoto. He immediately looked at the opposite Makoto. Her face at the moment was no longer the same as before, and she looked a little bit painful. Is there such a big side effect the first time you use it? Haruki hurriedly walked in front of her. A light green chakra appeared on both hands, covering her eyes. With the spread of perception, he clearly noticed that her retina and optic nervous system had suffered varying degrees of damage. Haruki was silent for a moment. Sure enough, Makoto's two abilities are too heaven-defying. Yifu Yezaka and Yixanaki have the same tunes, but they are far less expensive. After all, every time Izanaki uses it, it costs a Sharingan. Not to mention Huang Quanjin, except for the higher-level Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Rinnegan, and Tenseigan, the rest of the pupil skills can be invalidated. In the future, unless it is a life-or-death crisis, don't use your Mangekyo Sharingan. Haruki retracted his hands and said, you should also feel the condition of your eyes. If you use it frequently, you will lose your sight quickly. Makoto nodded silently. Haruki said nothing. For Makoto, he is more at ease. It is impossible to be as reckless as her son Uchiha Sasuke. After driving Mangekyo Sharingan, he turned into a sunny pillar and went blind in 15 days. Then he had some doubts again, because Fugaku was still in the illusion and didn't wake up. What did you set for him? Haruki knew that Makoto would not abuse Fugaku for no reason, so he asked. It's the content of the teacher's class. What? Haruki turned to look at Makoto in surprise. Good guys. Why didn't I expect to instill knowledge directly with illusion? But you can only think about it. All members of the Shaw organization are talented, and ordinary illusions are useless at all, unless Makoto is asked to use Mangekyo Sharingan. However, the price is too high. It is estimated that she is blinded before she finishes learning. His thinking is more stubborn, and it may take more time to use conventional methods. Makoto looked at Fugaku, who was still there, and suddenly smiled and said, I was wondering what would I do if I were a teacher? I think you may have misunderstood me. Haruki shrugged, and noticed that the look she cast over was full of strangeness, and maybe there was a cheeky contempt for him. He had a calm expression and said, if it were me, it would be more than just going to class. For a proud person, the first thing to do is to break his pride. Only by trampling on what he is proud of will he break the cocoon and become a butterfly. He instantly returned to Akihabara. Haruki opened the door and shouted. Haruki left time for the two to exchange feelings. She deserves to be her teacher. He did not have time to speak. You have a lot to learn. Haruki smiled and stood still, opening his arms. Haruki has always worried that Makoto is too kind, but today it seems that he doesn't know how to adapt. You play slowly, I'll go find your wife first. Tsunade held it for a few seconds, walked slowly over, and then speeded up, trot and jumped, holding his arms around his neck. Makoto's eyes gradually admired Tsunade. Because he couldn't see the specific situation in the illusion, there was no fun watching the game. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Haruki supported her long legs with both hands. After a while, I saw Tsunade coming out of the study with a look of surprise on his face. Tsunade held his face and kissed with all his strength. Chapter 115 Uchiha Transformation Concept. Haruki felt a little itchy on her face. Opening his eyes, he saw Tsunade propping up his upper body with his left arm, pinching a tuft of hair with his right hand, and drawing it across his face. Wake up so early today. HMPH, after all, no one was making noise last night and disturbed me to sleep. Tsunade curled her lips and couldn't help but vomit. It was not because she wanted to get up at noon every day. Haruki looked at her cute expression, smiled, turned her left face slightly, and said, should I have a good morning, huh? Tsunade leaned in front of him and pecked his cheek. Satisfied. Satisfy. Haruki's head twisted to the other side. What else? There is none left. Tsunade pouted and pinched his right cheek with his hand. It's time to get up and wash. Without waiting for Haruki to answer, she seemed to have discovered something new world. Touch his chin and Adam's apple with his hand. This woman is simply playing with fire. I'm really not afraid of being rectified on the spot. Haruki grabbed her little hand and said, if you continue like this, you will have to get up at noon. Tsunade's head shrank, remembering the tragic past, and quickly got up and fled. Haruki looked at her back and suddenly smiled triumphantly. He came to the bathroom. Tsunade had already helped him squeeze the toothpaste, and the glass was filled with water. I'll change clothes first. After Tsunade finished brushing his teeth, he tiptoed and nodded on his side face, which was a bit cold. Haruki left the room a little later than her. He saw Tsunade in front of the dressing table, and without interruption, he went to the kitchen instead. I opened the refrigerator, thought about it, and cooked 2 bowls of egg noodles. In his previous life, he liked to eat noodles in the morning. Because it is more convenient, it smells good. Tsunade sniffed, a delicate fragrance of eggs and green onion. Simple and delicious. The addition is made by someone you like. It is simply delicious in the world. Are you so hungry? Halfway through the meal, Haruki looked up and found that she was already licking the bottom of the bowl. Be clean and do not need to wash dishes. Do you want to eat more? Haruki asked, picking up a chopstick's noodles. Well. Tsunade glanced at him, moved his seat, went in front of him, and opened his mouth to bite. Okay, I'm full. She was chewing the noodles and seemed to feel the sweetness. Haruki smiled slightly and finished the noodles she had bitten off. I'm going to wash the dishes, you go and change your pajamas. Tsunade quickly grabbed his bowls and chopsticks, brushed it and ran to the kitchen. Haruki returned to the room and changed into everyday clothes. Taking advantage of time, he looked at the honeymoon roadmap drawn by Tsunade yesterday. It is estimated that it will take several months to really play a circle. Haruki thought a little bit, since the daughter-in-law is going to play, of course she is pampering and can't be disappointed. It seems that Konoha's affairs have to be handled well. Looking at what? Tsunade grabbed his arm, drilled his head, raised his head, and put it on his shoulder. She immediately noticed that after Haruki was looking at the honeymoon map, she remembered the absurd thing in the study last night, and quickly put away the map. It will take a while to go out to travel. Haruki pressed her cheek to her hair and explained, Sha-sang has some arrangements. Well, I know, don't worry. Tsunade hugged him and enjoyed a moment of warmth. I should go to ninja school. Let's go. Haruki picked her up and walked toward the door until she let go on the street. He didn't go to school. After watching Tsunade disappear, he turned and went to the Skyfire research team. Although Minato Ryu successfully developed Skyfire, the default user was Hyuga, so ordinary people were not considered. Without Chakra's blessing, Skyfire's normal range is not far. The research team has been solving this problem for 2 weeks. However, Haruki came here today. There is another project. As early as when I was in discussions with the daimyo, I told him that in addition to Skyfire, the new army had other new equipment. He called it a puppet exoskeleton. The idea came from Sasori of Akasha. Of course, the crazy operation of transforming oneself into a puppet will not be mentioned first. He first appeared on the scene hidden in the puppet Fei Luhu. It perfectly makes up for the shortcomings of the puppet master's lack of close combat. This reminded Haruki of the mechanical exoskeleton from the previous life. There is a kind of likeness. The mechanical exoskeleton is too difficult with the current level of technology. But if combined with puppets, what about puppet exoskeleton tailored for ordinary humans? Skyfire is used as a means of attack, and the puppet exoskeleton is used as a means of defense. The combination of the two may not be inferior to the average ninja. The idea is very good, and there are many problems. The puppet master drives the puppet with chakra, but ordinary civilians do not have chakra. The only way is to give the puppet its own power source. It's like Sasori, who has been transformed into a puppet, what he calls regenerating nuclear. Haruki's temporary idea is to use electricity, because electricity generation is very easy and cheap. If it's chakra, unless you engage in a tail beast, otherwise, relying on ninjas, wouldn't it be the last? Haruki called Minato Yoshio and told him his thoughts. After a while, Minato Liangshan reacted. He smiled wryly and said, "Master Haruki, it is really embarrassing. If there is a design drawing for the puppet exoskeleton, we can imitate it, but I have never heard of the miniaturization technology of the battery. It's just that you don't have to study it." Haruki gave him an encouraging look. There are batteries in ninja, but they are relatively large and not suitable for exoskeletons. At this time he thought of Sasori of the Red Sand. If this guy is a few years older and can be used for himself, it would be great. Haruki didn't feel embarrassed, and he added, "If it doesn't work, use chakra." The big deal is that he goes to catch a tail beast and divide it into several pieces. No, it doesn't have to be a tail beast, as long as there is a chakra comparable to a tail beast. Minato Yoshio understood what Haruki meant. Since the conditions are relaxed, he can only do his best. He remembered one more thing, and said, "Master Haruki, do you know Takumi Shinobu?" "Have heard." Haruki nodded. Takumi Ninja is good at making and using ninjas and is the largest supplier of ninjas. He is very greedy. In the war-prone ninja world, selling ninja is undoubtedly the most profitable. There is also a plot about them in the original work. The 4-day elephants of Takumi Ninja Village tried to resurrect their ancestor Seimei, and went to capture Gaara, but failed and destroyed. If you can ask them for help, it might speed up the development of the puppet exoskeleton. Haruki has asked Hyuga Hiyashi to deal with it. Since he doesn't believe Sand Shinobi, he replaces all the staff with ninjas or civilians in Konoha village. Is that so? In addition, Sora Shinobu is also one of his goals. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. The problem is stuck with Sarutobi Hiruzen. Afterwards, Haruki walked out of the research institute and went to the train station. Takumi Ninja Village has a very high level of toleration, and he is relatively weak. For him, it is indeed a good choice. With the efforts of Hyuga Hiyashi, a relatively rudimentary train station was erected not far from Akihabara. If there is the technology of Kornobu, and the puppet exoskeleton, a special force may be formed. Railroad tracks are laid underneath, connecting Tsunade. He did not trust Tsunade, thinking that it might be possible to reach Konoha village by train. Haruki was lost in thought, but Minato Ryu reminded him. "Air and space forces. I will take care of this, but before that, I still have to trouble you. But it is not open to traffic now. There are very few ninjas in the original work that can fly." Haruki raised his head and patted his shoulder. It just so happened that he was going to spend his honeymoon with Tsunade, and he stopped by to visit Takumi Shinobu to see what the situation was like. Chapter 116. To be honest, today's Mikoto gave Haruki a big surprise. He didn't expect her to have such courage at all. It is very similar to what he did when dealing with the Hyuga clan. It's a bit of great effort to create miracles, and the taste of heavy classics in troubled times. Haruki looked at her earnestly and said, "Mikoto, I hope you know what you are talking about, and I also hope that you will not be influenced by powerful forces, do you understand?" Mikoto's change seemed to him to be good, but he didn't want to see Mikoto become another himself. Conspiracy and darkness are temporary after all, and only the sun in this world cannot look directly at it and cannot overcome it. "I see." Mikoto shook slightly, and a warm current surged in his heart. Haruki's concern made her know that she was not alone in the fight. Someone can understand her. In her eyes, Haruki is her guide and her direction. The reason why Mikoto made such a decision far beyond her own character was because she remembered a word Haruki said to her. Seeking peace through struggle leads to peaceful existence, and seeking peace through compromise leads to peaceful end. In the illusion, her son Uchiha Itachi perfectly confirmed this sentence. To compromise with the enemy, there can never be peace. Now that I have the ability to fight, I will never be like Uchiha Itachi, and I will never allow future children to kill their fathers and mothers. Haruki felt the unquestionable in Mikoto's words, and confirmed that she did not make a decision impulsively because of a powerful force. He didn't know that he had borrowed the words of a great man to get her to abandon too much kindness, which had an effect. The power of Mangekyo Sharingan is too great, and I am worried that people in the village will notice. Mikoto frowned and talked about the ultimate goal of finding Haruki. Teacher, is there a way to hide Anbu and Hokage from them? This is simple, just use the barrier of the seal technique to block chakra's fluctuations. Haruki smiled. This is the so-called black under the lamp. She forgot her best friend, Kushina's sealing technique. As the most buggy seal technique in the original work, it is almost omnipotent. Uzumaki Mito even 9 tails can close a small black room for decades, making it unable to perceive the outside world. Makoto, chakra is nothing. Seal technique? Makoto smiled embarrassedly, saying that she was offended. She always treated Kushina as her sister and subconsciously ignored her ability. For anyone who needs help, look for Haruki. In her eyes, Haruki is simply a Doraemon, no matter what the question can be answered. After getting used to it, other people become the second choice. Well, when Kushina comes back, let her help. Just take advantage of this time. The two of you will sort out the Uchiha clan first. The overstubborn guy, bury it, it's just a stumbling block that hinders you, leaving them will only mess. Now that Makoto is so enlightened, Haruki is too lazy to hide it, and directly reveals the card. At this moment, Fugaku glanced at Haruki, who was an understatement, and then at Makoto, who nodded silently, feeling that he was too much. He felt complicated inside slightly. Although I had the intention to change the Uchiha clan, I didn't expect the process to be twisted and bizarre. Its ridiculous F-King opened the door, ridiculously home. First, the intended fiancé awakened the highest Sharingan recorded in the genealogy, and gave herself 12 years of ideological education, and then discussed with Makoto, which resulted in a crazy cleanup plan. Fugaku finally understands why Makoto values Haruki so much. He now has a very strange and confused feeling. Because of the learning in illusion, he agreed with the two people's approach, and even willing to join the Sha organization. But inside, he felt that he might be controlled by Mangekyo Sharingan. So does this come from your own heart? Haruki stood up. It is foreseeable that Uchiha's change will usher in the fear of Sarutobi Hiruzen and others. But this is not important. He wanted to give third generation a decent death because of Tsunade, Jiraiya and Orochimaru. If you don't want to, let him help decently. Teacher, let's prepare first. Seeing this, Makoto bowed to Fugaku and left without asking. Beautiful. Makoto. Fugaku hesitated and spoke, his doubts squeezed in his heart. If you want to know anything, just ask. Makoto smiled, with a gentle tone, which made Fugaku pluck up courage. The shadow that illusion gave him was too big, so that he no longer has the so-called pride of Makoto. What's the matter with the night of genocide you mentioned? It's the content of illusion. Makoto had expected it, so he roughly described Haruki's illusion that stimulated her to open her eyes. It means we have an unfilial son who killed us all for Konoha? Fugaku was extremely uncomfortable after listening to it. The illusion was fake, but he couldn't agree. The so-called Baishin filial piety first, respect for parents is. No, how can I have such an idea? He remembered that this was Haruki's teaching when he fell into the Mangekyo Sharingan illusion. Isn't you who you are after all? Fugaku sighed in silence. He can't go back. Don't worry, there won't be such a thing. Makoto glanced at him, noticed his sad look, and said comfortingly. Fugaku sighed. According to Haruki's plan, there would be no chance for such a young man to appear. Even if he did, he wouldn't be able to pass Makoto's level. Our children in the future will naturally be well educated, and will be handed over to the teacher to take care of the baby in the big deal. Makoto let go of Haruki's illusionary fear at the moment, and she is not the ordinary mother, but the Mangekyo Sharingan that almost no one in the Uchiha clan owns. Fugaku had mixed feelings when he heard Haruki's name. But then he cheered up and must revive his husband. Since Makoto can turn on Mangekyo Sharingan, I didn't expect to be able to turn it on. To be reasonable, his talent is definitely higher than Makoto's. Thinking of this, the frustration in his heart was wiped out. Fugaku, if we have a son, what name are you going to take? Makoto asked suddenly. Name? Fugaku suddenly heard this question and was stunned. Are you so anxious? They only confirmed the relationship between their boyfriend and girlfriend yesterday, so do they want to think about the child's name today? Although he was a little confused, he pondered for a moment and gave his own answer. Uchiha Itachi. In an instant, he felt that the surrounding environment seemed to drop to 0 degrees. But soon it returned to normal. It was as if he had hallucinated himself. Uchiha Itachi? Makoto smiled faintly. It really is a good name. She raised her head and looked at the distant summer sky. Is it a coincidence? Is it really such a coincidence? Teacher, what kind of person are you? Suddenly, Makoto felt misty on Haruki's body. She thought she had seen him clearly. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 117 Personality Modification. Although some time was lost by Uchiha Makoto and Uchiha Fugaku, it was not much. After Haruki left the train station, he came to the financial department of the Sha organization. At the first meeting held previously, he mentioned the creation of a new bank. The Infrastructure Investment Bank of Tsunade Journey has been put into use, and currently the only customer is 3rd Cage. The second customer scheduled for Haruki is the 3 of Akatsuki's Nagato. However, their organization is currently in the initial stage and is temporarily unavailable. So this bank is quite idle. The construction of new banks is particularly important. He called it Konoha Savings Bank. Haruki formulated relevant rules and regulations in accordance with the standards of the previous bank. After several weeks of construction, a special underground bank was established in Konoha. Fortunately, there are so-called underground banks, so it did not attract Sarutobi Hiruzen's attention. No, Haruki suspected that he didn't understand the role of banks at all. What people in this world know about money houses or banks is borrowing. But besides borrowing and depositing money, there are many things banks can do, such as regulating the economy. At present, Haruki's bank has only two responsibilities: loan and deposit. Among them, loans are also different from underground banks. They are not usury. At the same time, they tend to be commercial loans. It is similar to an infrastructure investment bank, but one is an individual and the other is an organization or region. Needless to say, deposits. Haruki intends to come up with electronic payment. At least Konoha is fine. With the prestige of Haruki and Tsunade, almost no one doubts their credibility, and no one thinks they will run away with money. And electronic payment is not difficult. As long as Haruki's network research team develops a local area network, it can be implemented. Once you get used to electronic payment, it becomes extremely troublesome to use paper money or wallets. In his previous life, Haruki had not carried any cash with him, so he only needs a mobile phone to go out. Of course, the emergence of mobile phones takes a long time. But bank cards can also achieve similar payment effects. Haruki strolled around the Konoha Savings Bank. Currently, there are not many customers. The importance of money is equally important in any world. Without complete trust, it is impossible to hand over the money to the bank for safekeeping. But time will tell. In fact, Haruki's response to this is simple. One is interest. Money begets money is visible, and the other is to establish a model. He plans to find a few ninjas to save money in a high-profile manner. After exposing his strategy to the members of the finance department, Haruki went to the next place. A good relationship between Gold and Jade, but this doesn't need him to worry about, and he doesn't even need any strategy. Following the wedding of Haruki and Tsunade, the marriage of Gold and Jade is well known in Konoha. Especially Tsunade's wedding ring of the same style has sold very well. Even with other gold and diamonds, it has also been promoted. The current Gold and Jade marriage is already one of the main sources of income for the Shaw organization. Haruki left with satisfaction. He found that Shaw was organized to a certain level, and he only needed to grasp the direction. Like a ship, he is a navigator. He no longer needs to worry about most things. After thinking about it, Haruki found Oki-kai. It's not that he needs to publish any novels. His Sword Art Online and Slam Dunk are estimated to last a long time. In addition, I have hired 3 more authors. Although the level is far lower, at least it is first-rate in the ninja world. Haruki wanted Oki to make a movie. It's not an action movie that 2 people can shoot, but a war movie that has been artistically processed. He intends to bring the first open-air movie to Konoha's villagers in the name of praising the ninja heroes in the Second Ninja World War. Well, it's free. Haruki's purpose is to promote Tsunade. In the last war, Tsunade became famous mainly because of the demigod Hanzo. Most people's impression of her is the legendary Sannin and medical ninja. But what is the specific level, almost few people can understand. One is that it is too far away from Tsunade, and the other is that Tsunade has not been promoted. Haruki wanted to use this movie to use at least 1/3 of the content to show Tsunade's rescue of the wounded. Doctors are always respected. But because the strong in the ninja world respects the strong, most of the eyes are on ninjas such as Konoha's White Fang and Golden Glitter. After Haruki told Oki-kai, he was not too surprised. Movies and cinemas are not novel gadgets. This kind of super-violent thing, like a computer, exists in the Hokage ninja world at the same time. But Haruki's advantage lies in his ability to mobilize ninjas and the knowledge of previous lives. He is sure to make a war film with explosive special effects. After all, ninjutsu is true. Haruki suddenly thought that this kind of movie should be quite popular in Fire Country. Outside of Ninja Village, few have ever seen a powerful ninja, so they must be curious. Anything else? Oki-kai asked again after writing down the plot. The last one, Tsunade's actor must be restored, do you understand? Haruki patted Oki on the shoulder. Restore? Oki was stunned. It is almost impossible to find another Tsunade princess. Anyway, try to be pretty. Haruki knew what the audience wanted to see, a beautiful big sister, and a life-saving nurse, who wouldn't like it? In his previous online game, he wanted to meet the sharp big nanny most. Tsunade's reputation should be improved by this movie. The peacetime in the next few years will be her advantage. Sarutobi Hiruzen would never think that in addition to powerful ninjas, other types of ninjas can also be surrounded by enough. Judging from the main factors of Hokage's selection, Tsunade is not lacking. Strength, prestige, and connections. It only takes one chance and Tsunade can become the next generation of Hokage. Haruki thought about the opportunity and returned home. Tsunade is not there. Because she wants to prepare for her honeymoon trip, she also wants to arrange the medical class properly, which should be very busy these days. Speaking of opportunities, Makoto's performance today inspired him. Since she can repeat the night of genocide, is it reasonable for me to come to the Nine Tails Chaos? It just so happens that Uzumaki Mito's lifespan is coming to an end. Haruki also has a little idea about Nine Tails. prepared to grab half of 9 tails and come back to play. Haruki retracted his thoughts and lay on the sofa for a while. Directly or indirectly caused countless deaths, and Obito. Haruki frowned, he really couldn't understand his thoughts. Haruki couldn't help but complain that he was a patient with severe secondary illness and mental illness without a qualified education. How about playing the Matrix? They are all important plot characters in the original work, and they are very talented in themselves. He needs to make a so-called social survey for the students in the class. Sitting on the newly changed office chair, Haruki picked up the roster of the ninja school. Among them, Uchiha Obito and Hitaki Kakashi are his focus. Kakashi is not bad, but this experience is like a lone star, except for the 2 protagonists and apprentices. His father, teacher and teammates died one after another. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Haruki must help this guy with his personality correction since he can still be rescued while he is young. The days without mobile phones and computers are a bit boring. At the beginning of August, it will be summer vacation soon. But it hasn't happened yet, there is no need to send him reincarnation now. Disappointed to the whole world because of the death of the girl I like. Including my own teachers and clansmen, it is simply poisonous. There is also the creation of the so-called infinite Tsukuyomi world where there is no war and peace forever. He pondered, got up and went to the study. Chapter 118. Haruki originally thought Kushina would come back first, but there was no sign of this guy a week later. According to her character, she probably had too much fun and forgot her teacher and best friend. But Haruki and Makoto didn't urge her to come back either. Because it is not yet time. Makoto has been compiling the list of the Uchiha clan. But she and Fugaku didn't understand everyone, so it took a lot of time. Reluctantly divide Uchiha into 3 camps. The radicals are so solemn, the moderates remain neutral, and the Hokages maintain the village. The point is naturally these people who are defiant and uphold Uchiha's pride. One of the leaders is Elder Uchiha. In comparison, Fugaku's father, the current patriarch, Uchiha Kusaku is more neutral. But his personality is similar to Fugaku, vacillating and lacking courage. Haruki did not intervene in this matter. The current Makoto is a bit more bold and powerful enough to handle it. He is preparing for film-related matters these days. In fact, Haruki didn't understand it either. He is mainly a part-time screenwriter, providing them with plot ideas. As a participant in the Second Ninja World War, he understood the process and was also afraid that the screenwriters would add messy elements. For example, war films joined the branch line of Dog Blood Love. After helping for 2 days, Haruki lost his role and went back to teach at the ninja school. Sure enough, the teacher suits me, Haruki couldn't help but think. When he finished class, he got news from Orochimaru that the wood-style experiment successfully achieved its goal. Hurrying to Akihabara Orochimaru's laboratory, Haruki saw the clones soaked in the transparent cylinder. It looks a bit like Orochimaru, but judging from the continuous vomiting of bubbles, there is no death. The condition in his body is very stable now. Orochimaru stared at the clone and licked the corner of his mouth, and it's a perfect container for me. Haruki stretched out his right hand, his palm attached to the glass, and the blue chakra rolled the liquid and sank into the clone's body. After a while, all the conditions were clearly fed back to his mind. Haruki nodded slightly and said, "When can surgery be performed?" "Anytime." Orochimaru retracted his gaze, glanced at Haruki, and said, "I'll call Tsunade." Haruki heard the self-confidence in Orochimaru's plain words, which meant that he was sure that he had completed an experiment instead of occasional luck. He still believed in Orochimaru. Besides, Orochimaru doesn't care about others, but it cares about Tsunade and Jiraiya. Haruki quickly called Tsunade. She was not surprised because she had known it beforehand. It was the clone of Orochimaru that made her very interested. Her first reaction was to use the disabled ninja. Medical ninjutsu is amazing, but some serious injuries, such as a missing arm and a broken leg, are difficult to heal. Haruki frowned and touched Tsunade's shoulder. What's so good about a pirated Orochimaru container? Tsunade reacted immediately, turned his head to look at him, and smiled. Then I think you were okay? Haruki was teased by her sudden offensive. Start the operation. Orochimaru turned around blankly and put on his gloves. Haruki and Tsunade suddenly chuckled. YF2F, trouble you, Orochimaru. Tsunade's beautiful bright eyes, as if there are stars, are always reflecting the figure of Haruki. Go, there will be nothing wrong with me. Haruki kissed her on the forehead, a smile appeared on her face. He was one of the strongest medical ninjas in the ninja world anyway. And Tsunade's 100 healings mark is also one of the biggest guarantees. With ninja art, meiotic regeneration, it is basically impossible to lose your life. Go up. Orochimaru interrupted the warm atmosphere in time. Tsunade ignored Haruki and responded with a kiss and sipped at the corner of his mouth. After finishing, lie down on the operating table. Although wood-style transplants first Hokage Senju Hashirama cells, different degrees mean different powers. Several people from the original, Yamato, Uchiha Madara, Obito, Shimura Danzo, all have mastered a certain wood style because of Senju Hashirama cells. But the power displayed is very different. The strongest Uchiha Madara can even be compared to Senju Hashirama, while the other three are hard to say. Half of Obito's body is cast by Hashirama cells, and there is no repulsion phenomenon, so it performs well. But Yamato has only 20% of Senju Hashirama's power. Shimura Danzo can only use wood style on his right arm, and it cannot stabilize Master Hashirama cells. Of course, wood style is a foreign object after all, and the tougher is the ninja itself. Sage body and massive chakra are fundamental. As the granddaughter of Senju Hashirama, Tsunade inherited a certain sage body, and also has 100 healings marked to accumulate chakra. In terms of conditions, it is closer to Senju Hashirama than Yamato. Haruki stared at Tsunade intently, and at the same time the light-colored chakra appeared in his hands, ready to go to the rescue at any time. Fortunately, there has been no rejection so far, as expected of the Senju clan. Orochimaru couldn't help but sigh. He has experienced too many failures during this period, and it has never been as smooth as it is today. He retracted his hands, took off his gloves, and said, "The operation was very successful." Haruki breathed a sigh of relief and waited for Tsunade to wake up. Seeing Orochimaru was leaving, he suddenly thought of something. "Orochimaru, you will perform another operation for me and give Uchiha Mikoto. Your apprentice." Orochimaru had heard of Mikoto, but he refused. Mikoto is Mikoto. Tsunade is Tsunade. To Haruki's expectation, Orochimaru was not a philanthropist. Tsunade is his teammate, and with his face, he is willing to help her. But Mikoto's portion is not enough. Haruki pondered a little. "What's the price? If I ask you to operate on Mikoto, what price will I have to pay?" "Rare blackmail opportunity." Orochimaru squinted his eyes. "Sharingan." "You're welcome." Haruki couldn't help shaking his head. As expected, it was Orochimaru's style, and most people were not qualified to trade with him. "But you are just at the price I can achieve. How about the elders of the Uchiha clan? 3 Tomo Sharingan." Orochimaru gave him a surprised look. He thought that Haruki would either refuse or find a heinous Uchiha to replace the dead ghost, but he didn't expect Haruki to give him a big wave directly. Almost the strongest pair of eyes in the Uchiha clan. "Can." Orochimaru nodded. As for how Haruki killed Elder Uchiha, it has nothing to do with him. A few minutes. Tsunade woke up. She clearly felt that her physical strength had taken a qualitative leap. After transplanting Hashirama cells into Obito, the self-healing ability and chakra have been greatly improved, and even the side effects of Mangekyo Sharingan have been greatly alleviated. Judging from the results of the experiment just now, Tsunade is not inferior to Obito. "How do you feel?" Haruki interrupted her contemplation. Tsunade jumped off the experimental platform, leaned in his ear, and said with a smile, "Tomorrow, you won't be able to get up at noon." Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 119. Passing Kakashi afternoon. The brilliant sun fell on the river surface, sparkling, reflecting a golden patch. In the small wood on the side, Haruki and Tsunade looked at each other. The atmosphere was extremely quiet, and the two did not speak. "Okay." A few minutes later, Haruki asked while stepping back. "I'm ready." Tsunade's face condensed and his eyes became sharp, but when he faced Haruki, he immediately showed a sweet smile. At the moment Haruki was slightly stunned, she quickly formed seals. Wood-style silent killing binding technique. A huge rectangular tree drilled out of the soil in front of Tsunade, like a flexible lion majesty, wrapped around Haruki's waist in an instant, and climbed up, leaping over his neck, and the tip was about to be stuffed into his mouth. "You don't talk about martial arts. Make a sneak attack." Enchanting old cadres unexpectedly. Haruki's eyes widened, but there was no time to speak, and the trunk of the tree blocked his mouth. The next moment, with a bang, his body disappeared. Tsunade didn't have any surprises. Ever since he knew that Haruki had wood style, he knew that his strength far exceeded her imagination. She turned around abruptly and slammed a punch. Haruki's smile, who was trying to hug her from behind, immediately solidified. The huge force shook the air open, and with Tsunade's fist as the center, Haruki directly cracked open. A tree stump fell. Body replacement technique. Tsunade was silent, and his long legs were raised high. When it fell, the ground seemed to have suffered a magnitude 9 earthquake, and pieces of soil couldn't help flying upwards. Suddenly, a half-meter deep pit appeared in the place where Tsunade was. Haruki patted the dirt on her body, looking at Tsunade with lingering fears. And Tsunade stood there, smiling like a flower, obviously in a very good mood. "I lost my face in bed, and I had to regain my confidence under the bed. The Saint Seiya will not be knocked down twice by the same move." When Haruki saw that she was using charm again, he couldn't help but snorted. "What is a Saint Seiya?" Tsunade blinked, like a cat, with curiosity and beautiful brilliance in his eyes. "Ah, it's my novel." Haruki stopped abruptly, and Tsunade disappeared before his eyes. "Gone, lie to me again." Tsunade really knows him too well, whether it is character or length. But Haruki also knows the power and depth of Tsunade. He clenched his fist and slammed behind him with the same strange force. The fist collided with the fist. It's like the sound of glass breaking. The strong wind wave blew Tsunade's long blonde hair. She showed a faint smile again. There was a sudden change in the right arm. Several tree trunks intertwined with each other, flying out from the shoulders, replacing her arms, and immediately like a flower blooming, a wooden net opened towards the sunny tree, as if it was about to capture him. Wood-style great forest technique. Haruki recognized the ninjutsu she used. I have to say that although Tsunade is a medical ninja, his combat experience is by no means inferior to other ninjas. Tsunade's triumphant smile lasted for only 2 seconds, and she backed away quickly. Suddenly, Haruki incarnate Muzzy and her trunk attacked each other and wrapped each other. Wood clone. Tsunade immediately thought of the various wood-style ninjutsu that Haruki had explained to himself, and mentioned that wood clone can be turned into sticks to attack the enemy after being lifted. She frowned. She didn't know when wood clone was used. But it was too late to think about it. Suddenly there was a bright red glow above the head, like sunset clouds. An oversized fireball, with the sound of howling wind, pounced on her. Tsunade stayed on the spot, and several tree trunks emerged from his right arm again, swelling and growing instantly, becoming a century-old tree, like a big umbrella, covering the top of her head, sheltering her from wind and rain. Wood-style thrusting spear. Wood-style technique of offense and defense. After blocking Haruki's fireball, Tsunade's chakra controlled the tree to continue to grow. But then she was a little surprised. Her big tree burned, and there was no tendency to go out. Instead, the flames rushed toward her along the branches. Tsunade made a decisive decision, removed chakra, and jumped back. Seeing the trunk being burned into charcoal, she couldn't understand it. If fire style could break wood style, her grandfather would not be able to beat Uchiha Madara. But she was Tsunade after all, and she quickly understood the reason. Chakra. Haruki's chakra is far deeper than her. The great fireball technique just now is no longer a simple sea level. Tsunade always feels something is wrong. Who is from the Senju clan? My wood style and physique are all inferior to Haruki. What are you thinking about? Haruki appeared in front of her, seeing her in a daze, did not continue to attack. But being able to learn and use 3 wood styles in one morning is already a pretty good record. In fact, in addition to teaching wood style, he doesn't need to worry about other things. But Haruki has decided to train more often in the future. Because Tsunade will meet a ninja far stronger than her in the future. Haruki prepares to let her adapt in advance, and it is best to simulate the opponent's ninjutsu. Such as Akatsuki's weird ability to organize. If you don't talk about victory after insight, the probability of running away will be much greater. I suspect that you belong to the Senju clan. Tsunade regained his senses and looked suspicious. Haruki was stunned. He got wood style and sage body, which really looked like the Senju clan. I'm not. He smiled and stretched out his hand and squeezed her cheek, and asked, what? Can't afford to lose. Who loses and who wins? Maybe. Tsunade curled his lips. Wait until I learn all the wood style, you guy. Well. Your mouth is not hard. Haruki was pushed away by her irritation. He was not angry, and said with a smile, it's soft. Tsunade's cruel words were interrupted by a kiss, but, I was so angry. She flipped through Byakugan. Can you be more serious? I'm serious, Haruki replied with a sincere expression. Tsunade felt a little helpless. She has nothing to do with Haruki. After all, he can't take advantage of him, but she couldn't understand Haruki's proud look, and directly raised her hand and gave him a hand knife. Haruki quickly reduced her expression, stopped teasing her, and said, in the future, let's keep practicing in the small forest. Tsunade nodded, and she finally had a general idea of Haruki's strength. But there was a little bit of unwillingness. She had always been better than him before. If this continues, she can only be bullied forever, so she has to become stronger. There is a little guy who has been peeking, don't you plan to deal with it? Tsunade glanced at a tree on the right. When the two were fighting, she noticed someone approaching. Kakashi, don't you say hello to the teacher? Haruki hooked Kakashi. Hello teacher. Kakashi walked out from behind the big tree. He was passing by and was going to practice ninjutsu, but unexpectedly heard a huge movement. Driven by curiosity, he saw an amazing scene. Wood-style battle between 2 medical ninjas. It turned out that Haruki-sensei, who usually doesn't show up, is so powerful that even Tsunade, one of Sanin, is not an opponent. As a genius of the ninja school, and often taught by his father Konoha's White Fang, his strength and vision are far beyond the average genin. Just like this, he can feel the strength of Mr. Haruki. And there is the lost wood style. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 120. The night of killing Kakashi's scalp is numb when Haruki and Tsunade are looking at it. He had never heard of wood style between them. All sorts of strange thoughts flooded in my mind. Seeing their secrets, do you want to be murdered? Kakashi resisted the urge to escape, because it's useless to escape. He exhaled and barely calmed down. Teacher, I just happened to be passing by. I originally planned to find a secluded place to practice swordsmanship. Cultivation? Has Shuamao go out to perform the task again? Haruki knows that Hitaki is a typical mission mad. Often not at home. Kakashi nodded when he heard the words, and at the same time the tension in his heart faded. He heard Haruki's tone, the same as usual. Suo Mao and I are good friends and your school teacher. It just happened that there hasn't been anything lately, I can guide you. Haruki groaned. Tsunade teaches anyway, and it doesn't matter if you add Kakashi. The original Kakashi was dragged down by Sharingan, resulting in a very weak body and lack of blue from time to time, which became the unit of measurement for chakra. But in fact, his talent is very high. Regardless of the bloody guy, Kakashi is definitely not worse than Sarutobi Hiruzen. Kakashi couldn't help but widen his eyes. He admires Haruki very much because of Obito. In just 1 month, Obito seemed to be reborn, not to mention the cute women's clothing. Both the character and the behavior are mature and become the appearance of an adult. If he can accept these, Obito's strength is like sitting behind him, just like his father's 1,000 years of death, always worried that it will fall. After Kakashi aroused interest, he followed Obito for a few days and discovered the reason. It was the teaching of Haruki and his 3 apprentices. To be honest, he used to think Obito was hopeless for an idiot. But I didn't expect it could really be saved. This shocked Kakashi a lot. Thank you, teacher. After Kakashi recovered, he responded full of words, speaking quickly, for fear that Haruki would regret it. Haruki couldn't help but smile. His eyes thought slightly, and he asked, "Do you know Shadow Clone technique?" "I know the content, but my chakra is not enough," Kakashi answered honestly. Not enough to exercise. Haruki knew that Kakashi's chakra volume was actually normal, but Sharingan that could not be turned off was a debuff, constantly consuming his chakra. But he doesn't have Sharingan now. As long as you are properly trained, coupled with the extreme stimulation of Binglang pills and medical ninjutsu, you can increase the amount of chakra. At present, the most suitable training is physique and chakra control. If Uzumaki Naruto is a mage, then Kakashi is destined to be a warrior. Haruki has a preliminary idea. Kakashi can perfectly match the lightning style with swordsmanship, and be a fast man, just like Zim and Fubuki. He told Tsunade to go home first and led Kakashi to a fruit shop. "Your training today is to cut fruit." Haruki picked up a watermelon and threw it into the air, chakra pouring out of his palm, pulling it into a wire. The next moment, the blue light flew, and the watermelon was cut into 64 pieces. The incision is flat without any unevenness. Kakashi was a little lost. In just a few moments, being able to do this means Haruki's super strong chakra control. Haruki patted him on the shoulder and said nothing. When Kakashi became a fruit ninja, Haruki went to the research institute to borrow a large battery. Hanging it on Kakashi's back, Haruki said, "Your second training is to inject the thunder attribute chakra into the battery, but you must be careful. Once it gets too full, it will explode." Kakashi looked suspiciously at the storage battery that Haruki kept pouring out of the storage scroll, his eyes gradually sluggish. He doubted that Haruki used him as a humanoid generator. 20 for now. Haruki raised the corner of his mouth, stopped the movement in his hand, took out an empty storage scroll and gave it to Kakashi. In this way, Kakashi began the practice of harming fruits. At first it was a large watermelon, but gradually turned into small fruits such as bananas and sakura peaches. And Haruki ushered in the return of Uzumaki Kushina outside the village. Kushina rubbed her eyes and ballooned her mouth. "Why is the teacher alone? Makoto?" "She can't spare time for the time being." Haruki smiled and handed her a piece of watermelon. "Just cut it, taste it." "What is Makoto up to?" Kushina felt a little puzzled. She picked up the watermelon and took a bite, the red juice splashed. "It's a long story. She is waiting for you to come back and help her." "Real?" Kushina's eyes lit up, and after gnawing on the melon a few times, a water stain appeared on her mouth. She suddenly found out that she was also useful. To be honest, 2 good teammates is also a very annoying thing. She often has to be forced to paddle. After Haruki asked her to wipe her mouth, he took her to the Uchiha station. It was close to dusk and it was very quiet. Makoto and Fugaku appeared in front of them. "Kushina." Makoto smiled with a gloomy expression in recent days. He was hugged by Kushina immediately. Kushina rubbed her arms. "Did you miss me?" "Have." Makoto let her act like a daughter. Fugaku on the side showed envious eyes. He never hugged it, but he can't be jealous, after all, it is the friendship of 2 good sisters. Haruki perceives the excessively quiet street, perceiving the spread, and can't help raising his eyebrows. Almost all Uchiha gathered in the shrine. I don't know what reason Makoto and Fugaku use. But their identities are indeed beyond doubt. One is the next patriarch, and the other is the next patriarch's wife. In one sentence, why did your majesty rebel? Kushina, I want you to help me block the breath of chakra. Makoto took Kushina to the surrounding area, preparing for the enchantment. Fugaku, do you regret it? Haruki watched Makoto and Kushina disappear into the sunset, red coloring the world. Fugaku was slightly startled when he heard Haruki's question. Regret? It is hard for him to say how he feels in his heart. It's very complicated. It's like a bad student who knows that learning is important but refuses to learn. Haruki raised his eyes, and an invisible barrier unfolded in his perception. The past and the present are as if heaven and man are at war. But according to the plot of the original, this enchantment may be a comfort product. Makoto's eyes began to spin. She smiled slightly and turned to enter the shrine. Just follow your heart. Me and Fugaku will do it. Teacher and Kushina will stay here and help us get the wind. Konoha village itself has an enchantment. Fugaku kept recalling the lessons Haruki taught him in illusion. Makoto and Kushina appear again. Mangekyo Sharingan in the shape of a triangular shield knife occupied her eyes. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. There was icy cold between the Scarlet. Haruki glanced at him, always feeling he was awkward. How much can it play as Schrodinger's cat? Kushina, don't watch. If Uchiha can usher in a bright future, I won't regret it. Chapter 121 The New System, Patriarch, the meeting is ready. Uchiha Kusaku glanced around the hall, and everyone was there, except for Fugaku and Makoto. He frowned slightly, as usual, they should have sat in their seats. I gonna go see. Uchiha Kusaku pushed open the half-covered door, and in the darkened night, he saw Makoto bathed in moonlight in those eyes. Weird and evil. As if to suck his soul in, it's so quiet. Uchiha Kusaku suddenly sighed. His thoughts are getting more and more groggy. Father. Fugaku, who was ignored by him, yelled at him. He wakes up. Fugaku, you guys. Uchiha Kusaku looked at the two of them, especially Makoto's eyes. He could feel that this was the same power as Sharingan, but even more powerful and shocking. Father, don't talk, just watch. Fugaku shook his head and stood side by side with Uchiha Hisaku. And Makoto walked into the shrine. The cold, like low air pressure, filled the hall all at once. Everyone felt that a huge stone was pressing on them. What happened? Everyone here looked up in amazement. Those who can have a seat basically have the level of Jonin, but at the moment they have no sense of security, like a sheep. Makoto is the lion who broke into the sheep herd. Makoto. The elder in the middle stood up in surprise and gloomy. What are you doing? I'm here to see the elders off. Makoto looked at him lightly. You. The elder suddenly trembled, and his eyes made him feel like an ice cave. How can it be? Under the strong pressure, his eyes automatically showed 3-go jade. But the next second, the elder showed a pained expression. He felt an iron hand formed by chakra and grabbed his neck mercilessly. And the most frightening thing is that he can't resist at all. Sharingan, who was proud of it, retracted like a natural enemy at this moment. Asphyxia. The elders can't breathe. His eyes were bloodshot and stared at Makoto, who was standing there. She did nothing. That beautiful face, which is always full of warm smiles on weekdays, is indifferent and unwarm at this time. It felt like a rabbit, with red eyes, and turned into a monster. What are you doing? Quickly let go of the elders. Fire-style great fireball technique. As a representative of the radicals, the elders were surrounded by many groups on weekdays. After being suppressed for a short time, the elders yelled. It even released ninjutsu directly in the shrine. A huge fireball, flashing lightly, appeared in front of Makoto. Makoto made no movement, and the fireball passed through her body. The eyes of the people around suddenly widened, and they couldn't believe it. Illusion. The talking ninja key, and again, a dozen fireballs poured into Makoto, but as before, they rushed directly. It seems that Makoto is a ghost that does not exist. Makoto snapped his fingers. The elder who had been tortured for a long time had his cervical spine completely broken. When the severe pain struck, he lost consciousness and lost his life. Blood was sprayed on the discussion table. Everyone lost their senses, and everything in front of them exceeded their understanding. Why did Makoto kill the elders? Why is she so strong? Kill her. There was a sudden roar from the shrine. The Uchiha clan has never feared death. The radical ninjas all rushed towards Makoto. Countless flames spread into one piece, as if a divine punishment from the sky, with an amazing killing intent, enveloped Makoto. But her figure in the wind did not waver. Makoto's eyes burst with a shocking edge. One after another shuriken appeared out of thin air, through the layers of flames, and flooded the hall in front of him. The blood was flying. Standing at the door, Fugaku supported the wall with trembling hands. Slaughter on one side. He turned pale, and for the first time experienced the terrifying power of Mangekyo Sharingan for killing. What is this? What is this? Uchiha stayed in place for a long time. He has experienced various battles throughout his life, but he has never been so strange and weak as today, which made him feel panic from the bottom of his heart. He looked at this daughter-in-law, who was unfamiliar with Ultimate. Is this really Makoto? There was a breath of horror all over his body. The radicals will be wiped out in an understatement. But he was startled immediately, and the dead ninja was resurrected again. Illusion. Haruki looked at Kushina, who was covering her eyes. There was a curious look between his fingers. It reminded Haruki of his previous experience of watching horror movies, scared, but wanted to watch it. But he and Kushina are outside of illusion. In fact, there is no way to see the bloody incident inside. In Haruki's perception, except for a few people who lost their breath, all the others stayed where they were and did not move. He also didn't know what would happen to them. Wouldn't it be class again? But learning is not useful for everyone, especially the Uchiha family. Many people are extraordinarily extreme. Kushina, just watch it if you want. Haruki really couldn't stand Kushina's cute look. But Makoto won't let me watch, Kushina said in her mouth, but she moved her hands away honestly. A pair of her eyes are watching the surroundings cleverly. Then nothing was found. Kushina was silent for 2 seconds, what she was doing before. That's stupid. Upon seeing this, Haruki smiled and said, you can enter the shrine. Kushina struggled for a moment, unable to stop curiosity, and stepped onto the stone steps. Haruki followed behind her. Soon I saw Uchiha Hisaku and Uchiha Fugaku. The two of them seemed to have just awakened from a dream, trance, and a look of despair. Haruki glanced over them quickly and looked at the shrine hall. Unexpectedly clean. Only 9 people lost their breath forever. While the rest of the people were panting, their eyes still filled with fear in the dim light. At the intersection of his eyes, Makoto stood silently. Makoto? Kushina's voice broke the silence. I'm fine. Makoto recovered and turned to look at Kushina and Haruki, with a gentle smile on his face. It seems that the previous ones are all illusions. After all, the proud Uchiha clan suddenly turned 180 degrees. He did not doubt that he was not called Sarutobi Hiruzen. The Ninja Congress system has no such drawbacks. Makoto, what are you going to do? She didn't care about Uchiha Hisaku and Uchiha Fugaku who came over. But unfortunately it is reality. No, another one, the Ninja Congress system. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. The only thing to worry about is getting the attention of 3rd Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen. But none of the Uchiha clan present dared to take it as an illusion. Makoto thought slightly, and said, I want to implement the system that the teacher said in Uchiha. Hyuga's electoral system. The system he gave to the Hyuga family seemed fair, but it actually had many shortcomings, such as endless wrangling and numerous factions. Makoto shook her head. She knew Haruki's election system in Hyuga's house, but the Ninja Congress system was more thorough and more in line with Uchiha's current situation. No, it should be said that if it is really an illusion, it would be fine. Haruki smiled and looked at Uchiha around them. Their expressions were uncertain, but most of them were shrouded in fear. Besides, there is his root, Shimura Danzo. Haruki was a little surprised. Chapter 122. Danzo's comeback. Haruki did not intervene much in the idea proposed by Uchiha Makoto. She is already a mature member of the Sha organization and should know how to act. The next day, Uchiha Kusaku reconvened the clan assembly at Nanga Shrine. Except for the 9 people who disappeared, everything is business as usual. The meeting table that was spilt with blood last night was also cleaned, without any peculiar smell. Uchiha Kusaku looked at the people in the hall and slowly said, I am very old and I am going to give way to young people in the clan. He is actually not old, he is in prime of life. But after witnessing Makoto's method, he did feel like the back wave pushed the front wave. After he finished speaking, the hall was quiet without objection. Uchiha Kusaku laughed at himself and gave the stage to his son Uchiha Fugaku. Finally, Makoto did not do too hard, promising to give Fugaku a fair chance. Fugaku stood up and thought of the patriarch selection system Makoto had told him. His expression was correct, but his heart was not at peace. He glanced at Makoto from the corner of his eye, her eyes closed tightly. It was not scorn, but temporary blindness in her eyes. Fugaku took a deep breath and talked about how to select the patriarch. Summarized in one sentence, all the members of the Uchiba clan vote on an equal basis, regardless of age, status, strength, or occupation, to elect the advisory group and the patriarch. But the core is not the patriarch, nor the advisory group, but the entire clan. No matter what decision must be made by all members of the clan, in other words, the advisory group and the clan chief are only the executors of the policy. Rao went through Makoto's overnight physics education, but this system also caused an uproar. Because it doesn't match their thinking all the time. The ninja world respects strength and prides itself on ninjas. Quiet. Makoto knocked on the discussion table with a serious voice, I'm not asking for your opinion. Everyone in the hall suddenly showed indignation, but no one objected. Fugaku wiped his sweat and was able to continue the explanation. His current self-cultivation is far inferior to the joy and anger of the future when he was the head of the patriarch. He just thought that the hall would usher in trouble again. But it was unexpectedly quiet. Fugaku's face is a little strange, maybe everyone from the Uchiha clan is a bit. Well, a question. After a while, the clan assembly ended, and the orders of Makoto and Fugaku reached the ears of every clan member. In the case of an anonymous vote, the selection of the patriarch and the advisory group began. Fruit shop. Kakashi, help me peel an orange. As Uchiha Obito said, he threw an orange over. Kakashi's face couldn't help but want to refuse, but the action in his hand was a step ahead. A circle of orange peels fell. It is very complete, and there is no break, it is simply the gospel of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Can you do it yourself? Kakashi was so angry that his voice was high, but at the same time he hated the body's reaction. Obito grabbed the orange, ignored him, and handed it to Rin Nohara. Thanks. Rin Nohara smiled gently. The awkwardness between Obito and Kakashi seemed to her to be a symbol of friendship. Haruki on the side beckoned to Kakashi, come here, let me check your body. Kakashi glared at Obito and stepped forward. Haruki used chakra to run around his body. Your body capacity has increased a bit. Kakashi suddenly smiled when he heard the words, and chakra increased, not in vain. Haruki talked to the owner of the fruit shop again. Although Kakashi wasted some fruit in the early stage, his ninja status and his more sophisticated skills attracted customers instead for the fruit shop. There are even rewards. After all, eating melons while watching acrobatics is really good. Lin, let me tell you that I voted for Sister Makoto in the morning and elected her as the patriarch. Obito was chatting with Nohara Lin and talked about the ongoing selection of the patriarch. For the first time, he was really involved in major events within the clan, so he was quite excited. Knowing that he belonged to the despised group in the Uchiha clan before, he might be better than the clan who went to the sea to do business. But now he can cast a sacred vote at the clan assembly. The most important thing is that the discriminatory vision has finally disappeared completely. Obito, why didn't you vote Fugaku? Haruki asked casually when he heard what he said. Sister Makoto is beautiful and gentle. Becoming a patriarch will definitely treat me well. Obito's reason is quite simple. He doesn't understand Makoto's strength, but he likes Makoto's character. Haruki shook his head secretly. Sure enough, it was a child. The vision is always so unique and direct. Another day. Haruki got the final result. Makoto was elected patriarch. And 20 people including Uchiha Hisaku, Uchiha Fugaku, Uchiha Hiroshi and others formed an advisory group to assist the patriarch and speak for the people. But the result that Haruki looked normal caused a wave of waves among the Konoha ninja clan. Because in their view it is very unscientific. Makoto is like a comet, suddenly rising, suddenly becoming a genius, and suddenly becoming a patriarch. It was too sudden. The office in the Hokage building. The smoke curled up. Sarutobi Hiruzen stared at the report in his hand, looking puzzled. How could it be Makoto, and this weird mechanism for selecting patriarchs? The Uchiha clan has always been the focus of their surveillance, whether it is him, the advisory group or Anbu. Before that, the unanimous consensus was Fugaku. Even after Makoto awakened Sharingan, the conclusion remained unchanged. Because Makoto's strength is not as good as Fugaku, the connections and abilities are naturally far inferior. But it was such a person who became the patriarch of one of the largest families in Konoha village. I've said that Haruki has a problem, you don't believe me. Shimura Danzo pushed open the door of the office, and he followed with a slightly indignant sentence. After the prison riots and Okichi's petition, he investigated what happened. Although there were only clues, he also saw the shadow of Haruki. But Sarutobi Hiruzen refuted him. Think he was jumping the wall in a hurry. Shimura Danzo was so angry that he had not spoken to him for several weeks. Because he understood that Sarutobi Hiruzen was deceived by Haruki's surface, and he had a lot of history, he didn't believe it. Damn it, he obviously shed blood for Konoha, and was hurt for him. This does not prove to be related to Haruki. Sarutobi Hiruzen got used to Danzo's sudden intrusion and didn't blame him. The character of the Uchiha clan, Hiruzen, you know, how can you restrain these arrogant guys without absolute strength? Danzo took a deep breath and said slowly, my root investigation revealed that 9 Jonin from the Uchiha clan disappeared, including the elders. Sarutobi Hiruzen suddenly raised his head, his face trembling slightly. Being able to make Danzo say the word disappear means that they are most likely dead. But Makoto definitely does not have this strength. After much deliberation, Haruki was the most suspicious. Although he is a medical ninja, he is well connected and rich, so he can do it. Hiruzen, don't hesitate, otherwise, you will regret it. Seeing his uncertain expression, Danzo hurriedly said loudly. I need more accurate evidence. Sarutobi Hiruzen held the report tightly, staring at Danzo and said, I allow you to temporarily resume root activity. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 123 The Legendary Big Sheep. As usual, Haruki and Tsunade practiced in the small woods outside the village. After strenuous exercise, a mess was left behind. The toppling trees attest to the extent of the fighting between the two. There is also a small tidbit. Haruki wanted to imitate Nagato Rinnegan's abilities, mainly Universal Pull and Shinra Tensai. The former can attract designated targets to one side, while the latter can bounce off a variety of attacks and objects. In Haruki's view, these two abilities are very much like gravity and repulsion. So he used wind style to simulate blowing and pulling. Because of his two large chakra, it can completely cause Universal Pull to have a similar effect to Shenluo Tianzheng, regardless of consumption. But the first time I used it, I was not very skilled. It just blows away Tsunade's clothes. Cough. Although he had seen it, Tsunade was caught off guard and became angry. He flicked his head a few times, causing it to swell up. Haruki stroked the heavy forehead, he really didn't mean it. But the explanation is pale. Tomorrow we will go to Omi to the west of Konoha first. Haruki used chakra to restore the grove as much as possible, but due to repeated torture by the two of them, he could only use wood style instead. But it is no longer the original tree. Tsunade also has no objection, she has been looking forward to the so-called summer social visit for a long time. The only thing that is not so good is the three little guys Uchiha Obito, who acted as light bulbs. They are too young to be suitable for some adult content. Haruki returned to Konoha and parted ways with Tsunade. He went to the fruit shop. Hitaki Kakashi spent an unforgettable month here. Become a glorious fruit ninja. The residents of the nearby streets are already quite familiar with him. Especially the second uncle of the fruit shop owner. A tall middle-aged man. I like to shout, "Good job, be rewarded," throw Kakashi fruit from various tricky angles. Except for the occasional mistakes Kakashi made at the beginning, everything else was neat and tidy, and he won a lot of money. 1 month later, he received a total of 50,000 taels. Although Hitaki Sakumo, who was returned from the mission, took it away on the grounds of "you are still young, Dad save it for you." But Kakashi, who got the first great fortune in his life, is still very happy. It's strange. He was about to throw up. Kakashi is tired of fruits now. But fortunately, such a life of onlookers is about to end. Kakashi. Haruki smiled and said hello, then looked at Obito and Nohara Lin who were nesting in the store. Does it hurt? Tell me if it hurts. Rin Nohara took a knife, hesitated and inserted it into Obito's body. A smear of blood poured out of his arm. Obito didn't care to answer. It doesn't hurt at all, you can use more force next time. Yi Yuan Lin's face was a little nervous, her hands pressed against his arms, and a faint green light emerged. Haruki sighed. He didn't know what to say. Because Nohara Lin has medical talents, Haruki began to teach her. It was originally intended to find her a guinea pig or something as an experiment. But Obito volunteered and was willing to take it. At the same time, Kakashi sighed, his thoughts were the same as Haruki. But it is not without benefits. This idiot reduced the number of matches with him because of this. He was cleansed. Oh, women will only affect the speed at which I cut fruits. After Haruki waited for Rin Nohara to finish his treatment, he informed the three of them to gather at Konoha Gate at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Kakashi came back to life again. You can't let him cut fruits when you go out for social inspections, right? Obito got excited too. Going out can increase the time with Nohara Lin. After all, if it were past summer vacations, there were not many opportunities for them to meet. After Haruki left, he contacted Orochimaru for Mikoto. Exchanged the elder's Sharingan for Hashirama cell surgery. She previously dragged a group of Jonin in Nanga Shrine into the illusion at one time, consuming too much pupil power, and she would be blind if not transplanted. At the beginning of September, there was already a breath of autumn. The temperature is no longer as hot as summer. The next day, Haruki and Tsunade had breakfast and came to Konoha Gate. Kakashi, Obito, and Nohara Lin haven't arrived yet. After waiting for a while, the three arrived one after another. They are all carrying backpacks, and they seem to be prepared. Leaving Konoha, our social investigation journey officially begins. Haruki glanced at them, because they could go out to play, their faces were more or less excited. And you can also prepare for your summer homework. What you see and hear on the road is the material for your report. I don't need any fancy language, I only need your true feelings. After saying what should be said, Haruki smiled sternly. The atmosphere became relaxed. But thinking of one more thing, he added, there may be battles on the road. If it is not particularly dangerous, the three of you will solve it by yourself. The three of Obito nodded together. The first stop is Jinjiang Town. As the name suggests, next to a river, it is a typical riverside town. There are abundant aquatic products here. Of course, Haruki did not make a choice because of eating. To the west of Omi Town is the country of iron. Hurrying slowly, Haruki's people arrived at Omi Town only a week later. The criss-crossing waterways occupy the city. Remind Shingshu of Wuzhong Watertown. It was already close to dusk, and the crimson sunset glowed on the water and houses, which made people feel relaxed and happy from the bottom of their hearts. They found a lodging house and had a dinner full of fish. Tsunade suddenly became embarrassed. Haruki, I think. What do you want to do? Haruki raised his eyebrows and smiled. Now there are only two of us. I will not resist what you want to do boldly. That was not what I meant. Tsunade glared at him. This guy can think about it every time. What? Haruki was a little disappointed. Then what do you mean? Ahem, I said you don't be angry. Tsunade was embarrassed again. Well, I saw a casino earlier. Oh, what Haruki thought it was, because he wanted to gamble. Although Tsunade was not as frequent as in the original because of him, but occasionally itchy hands. Let's go. Hearing this, Haruki squinted his eyes and saw the rabbit eyes in the majestic abyss. Haruki was startled slightly, remembering her title. The casino is different. After all, happiness is the most important thing. How to compensate? Before entering, Tsunade subconsciously changed to an ordinary image. Haruki stretched out his right hand. The casino is on the east side of Omi, a relatively remote place. I'll talk about it then. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Tsunade's eyes were bent like crescent moons. She elbows Ting Qingshu's waist and said in a seductive word, I will make up for you next time. Tsunade puts on his right hand, can't wait to pull him, and walk outside the door. The legendary big fat sheep. losing to the point where it can only rely on transformation technique to escape debts. He is not short of money now, and he can make Tsunade happy, and it can be regarded as playing the role of money. The red lantern illuminates the scene in the hall. Very lively. There are no online games in the ninja world, and most people's entertainment at night is not just sleeping or sleeping. Chapter 124 Shuriken 800 meters away Haruki looked at the casino. As one of the most lively places at night, it is no less than a water tea house, which is also a brothel. For different people, each has its own advantages. Looking around, there is not much difference from the casinos Haruki has been to in the past. Tsunade was already sitting at the gambling table, and after tangling for a few seconds between the single and double sides, he pressed on the side of the double. The croupier is a middle-aged male with a bald head, showing his upper body and embroidered cyan tigers on his left and right shoulders. He held the dice cup and shook it from side to side. After everyone placed their bets, the dice cup slammed on the table, and under the nervous gaze, he took away the dice cup. 3. Singular. Haruki stood behind Tsunade and saw this result without the slightest surprise. In a sense, Tsunade's luck is heaven-defying. It's hard to win all the time, but it's not easy to lose all the time. Haruki looked at it for a while, shook his head, and couldn't bear to look straight. The dishes are outrageous. He turned around and took a cup of tea, took a sip, and frowned. It was indeed a casino. This tea was very poor quality. An hour later, Haruki took out 100,000 taels without surprise. The gambler at the table saw him and Tsunade as if a tiger saw a sheep, his eyes filled with excitement. With money and poor luck in gambling, he has already lost more than 10 million. Guest, why don't you go and play in person? A figure of Myoman slowly appeared in front of Haruki's eyes. What followed was a rich aroma, like a rose. Haruki turned to look at the beautiful dealer. The red cheongsam with high crosses perfectly outlines the plump arc. He heard a lot of drooling sounds around him. I cannot play. Haruki looked calm and shook his head. The guest laughed, just guessing odd and even. The croupier covered her little mouth and laughed restrainedly. Following her movements, there was a wave of waves. Someone just needs to play. Haruki pointed to Tsunade and asked, are you the croupier here? Why don't you go up? I just came here, I'm a substitute. If I shake, will the guests come? The dealer stretched out his white right hand and shook it out of thin air, with a charming expression on his face. Maybe it will. A smile appeared on Haruki's mouth. The croupier immediately replaced the bald man and tore open his right sleeve amidst the shouts of the crowd. Only Tsunade remained unmoved, she is already anxious. His face was flushed with blood upwelling. Haruki watched the show of this beautiful croupier with great interest. In the past, Tsunade's fist should fall on him, but at this moment, she was watching the dice cup nervously. Another hour passed. Tsunade lost in a summa, 35 million taels. Haruki pulled her through the crowd and left the casino. I'm so angry. Tsunade stomped while cursing. Okay. Haruki stretched out her hands to hold her cheeks, ruddy and warm. He can feel this feeling. Just play the game, you kill the super god, and your teammates send it to the super ghost. Tsunade's mood gradually recovered. She stood on tiptoe, licked the corner of Haruki's mouth, and said with a smile. Just treat it as returning your 35 million taels. How can it be so easy? Haruki obviously can't be sent by a small kiss. I haven't pursued you and the beautiful croupier yet? Tsunade curled her lips. Although she was addicted to gambling, she still cared about Haruki. Not bad. Haruki was a little surprised, and immediately smiled. Who said she is a beautiful woman? It's transformation technique. Haruki's voice was slightly cold, and he felt a little familiar when he saw the croupier. Obviously it was the first time I met, so I shouldn't have this feeling. He recalled now that the croupier's transformation technique seemed to be imitating Tsunade. The figure and the charm are quite charming, but more charming. Tsunade couldn't help frowning. Maybe it's the casino's trust. Haruki was not broken either. Since someone has sent fun, of course he happily accepts it. No wonder I lost so much. Tsunade's next sentence made Haruki dumbfounded. You don't really need to trust you. He saw Tsunade's mouth puckered out of anger, and he lowered his head and bit. It's easy to get old when angry. We are medical ninjas. Tsunade gave him a blank look. Haruki remembered that 100 healings mark does have the function of preventing aging. The two walked side by side to a deserted street. The moonlight is clear. It should have been a wonderful night, but unfortunately there was a third party who broke in unexpectedly. After turning into a remote corner of the alley, 5 people descended from the sky in front of them. Haruki glanced. It's all rebellious. 2 Jonin, 3 Chunin. From Kirigakure. Let me do it. Tsunade rushed to stop in front of Haruki. She was unhappy because of losing money. Now that she has a chance to vent, she will not miss it. Hand over your money. The leading middle-aged man didn't care about Tsunade's behavior at all. He had strong confidence in himself. Except for a few ninjas, none of them made him scared. What's more, he came here this time, first because of Haruki's money in the casino, and second because of being instructed by others, and this person is far more terrifying than the devil. You only need money? Haruki thought for a while and asked. Nature. The middle-aged man frowned. This guy was too calm, making him uneasy. Without waiting for Haruki to ask again, he did not hesitate to seal with both hands. Water-style water dragon bomb. Countless drops of water rose up. The reason why he chose to do it here is because of Zhang next to him. Under Chakra's lead, the water drops calmed into violent, and after a roar, the huge water dragon revolved towards Haruki and Tsunade. At the same time, Jonin behind the middle-aged man also quickly seals, and a vast white mist suddenly descends. The figures of the 5 people disappeared. Kirigakure's classic tactics. Haruki remained motionless, and Tsunade's body is like a horse running wild. While avoiding the water dragon bomb, he clenched his right fist and blasted it diagonally upwards. In the next instant, a sorrowful scream sounded in the fog. A Chunin's body completely disintegrated, and was directly shaken by the terrifying force, like a firework, scattered into the sky. The middle-aged man's pupils shrank violently, and his body trembled slightly. He had never seen such a violent fist, but after all his battles, he immediately recovered, pressing down on the anxiety in his heart, quickly crossed his hands, and chakra gathered to his throat. The white mist expanded rapidly, and a behemoth formed by transparent river water appeared. Like a waterfall rushing down from a very high mountain, with the speed of rotation, it is directly crowded with the sight of Haruki and Tsunade. Tsunade was not afraid at all, and raised his foot. The whole body of chakra is concentrated on her white bare feet. There was a boom. The waterfall stopped flowing. The huge long water polo was kicked and split by her. Haruki took a breath. I don't know what came to mind. He couldn't help shook his head, and the Tsunade at home was more lovely. Water drops in the sky formed a rain curtain, accompanied by white fog. The whole street was faint. At this moment, a shuriken was thrown out 800 meters away. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 125. I fought against first generation. This shuriken was silent. Thin and black. It was very calm at first, but after approaching the white mist, it suddenly resembled lightning, and the speed was so fast that it reached the ultimate speed, so that it left a burst of air on the spot. Careful. Tsunade was the first to sense it and hurriedly turned around and shouted. Haruki raised an eyebrow, and the target of this shuriken was him, not Tsunade. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and as soon as he touched the shuriken, he was already in front of him. Haruki stretched out his hand to hold the shuriken. The powerful force made his body tremble. It is definitely not easy to throw such a powerful ninja from 800 meters away. Haruki's thoughts flashed by. Immediately smiled, the shuriken turned around in his hand, and as he threw it hard, it flew back at a terrifying speed. Chakra gathered his eyes. Haruki clearly saw the ninja on the hillside outside the town. The familiar dress surprised him. Kakuzu. The Akatsuki members in the original work have lived a full 91-year-old ninja. If it weren't for plot killing, he should be able to live forever. As long as you live long, you can see everything. He has played against first Hokage Senju Hashirama. Of course the result goes without saying. Luckily, what awaited him after regaining his life was the punishment for mission failure. So Kakuzu killed the high-level villagers in a rage and captured forbidden technique with grievances. He is a very pure ninja, separated from other tastes. Love nothing but money. I have been running around for money in my long life. There was a thunderous sound in the air. Kakuzu's expression was awe-inspiring, and the chakra in his body gushed out freely, and the skin on the surface became dark and hard. His arms galloped at an accelerated speed, and finally he held the shuriken before touching his body. The harsh sound of metal intersecting. The terrifying power carried by the shuriken directly shattered the black skin of his hands. Kakuzu felt like he was hit by a fast-moving locomotive. His Earth-style Earth Spear can block the power of the detonating talisman, but it can't stop a small shuriken. Damn it. Kakuzu staggered and slid into a ravine on the ground. When he stopped, he noticed that this shuriken was exactly what he had thrown out. Intact, without any hands or feet, just pure power. Kakuzu turned around without hesitation and ran away. Although he loves money, the premise is to spend his life. There is no need to waste his life, but immediately he stopped. Look at Haruki and Tsunade in front of you. Kakuzu turned his head and glanced blankly, and as expected, all the 5 ninjas he had urged rushed to the street, most of them dead. You are the beautiful croupier in the casino, right? Haruki saw Kakuzu for the first time in this life. After becoming a trader, he has been offering rewards to make money. So the reason why Kakuzu found himself was definitely for money. But from whom does the money come from? It's me. Kakuzu watched the terrain everywhere, and the elderly brought a wealth of combat experience. After a short fight, he concluded that he wanted to get a bounty is not an easy task. In this case, choose to retreat. Unexpectedly, the famous Kakuzu would have such an interest. Do you know me? Kakuzu was startled slightly, ignoring his teasing. You are the best hunter in the black market. After a pause, Haruki said, who wants to kill me? If you can tell his name, I will give you double the price. Kakuzu hesitated for a moment, shook his head and said, I have professional ethics, and I am only responsible for hunting ninjas who are offered rewards. As for who is offering rewards, I don't care. So, can we agree? Haruki shrugged. Kakuzu was silent, and the chakra in his body was already flowing. Haruki glanced at him and smiled. If you can beat her, I will let you go. Kakuzu looked at Tsunade subconsciously. In the previous battle in the mist, he could see clearly that although Tsunade's power was scary, he was a medical ninja after all and was not good at fighting. His only concern is the unfathomable Haruki. The power of that shuriken reminded him of a bad past. Although Kakuzu is not afraid of Haruki, his 5 lives are precious, and he wants to make up for a lot of trouble. He stopped talking and distanced himself. The air in front of him was suddenly filled with chakra, and with the movement of his hand, a huge dragon head appeared, with a series of mud bombs ejected from his mouth. Only use wood style, Haruki whispered to Tsunade. Tsunade immediately put away his fists, his hands were sealed, and a row of wooden pillars rose from the ground, bending to form a barrier to protect her body. The angled eyes suddenly widened, subconsciously want to run away. The shadow in his heart resurfaced. Back then, he tried his best to finally defeat Senju Hashirama, a wood clone, and then he was hit with a hammer. It is his greatest shame. The earth dragon bullets collided with the wooden stakes, and one after another, jet black splashes bloomed. Kakuzu also recovered his calm as a result. Tsunade's wood style is far worse than Senju Hashirama's. Stable and winnable. He took a deep breath, planning to get serious. As chakra danced, black tentacles emerged from all over Kakuzu's body, and 2 masks appeared on the left and right shoulders. Tsunade's eyes narrowed, although she didn't know how to complain, but this weird appearance instinctively made people uneasy. Putting his hands together, extending his right arm, several thick branches criss-crossed towards Kakuzu. Kakuzu took a step to the right. The mask on his shoulders suddenly opened his mouth, spitting out a line of fire the thickness of an arm. The flame swelled in the wind, and ran on the ground, instantly forming a sea of flames. The branch that leapt over immediately burned and turned to ashes after a while. The hot breath, as if Shinigami is coming. Thin sweat appeared on Tsunade's forehead, and she pressed her right hand to the ground. In the dusty, huge walls rose up all around her. The impulse of the flame was blocked. The sound of beeping was suddenly mixed with thunder. The next moment, the spear formed by thunder and lightning penetrated the wooden wall and Tsunade directly. The sound of touching. Tsunade turned into a wooden branch, avoided the thunder and lightning, and rushed towards Kakuzu. Kakuzu frowned slightly. Was it wood clone? This condensed the killing intent in his heart again. He hates wood clone the most. Numerous wind pressure appeared in front of him, and the mouth of the mask on his left shoulder was extremely wide open, as if he could swallow half a watermelon in one mouthful. Rotate, keep rotating. The blast of the wind was more terrifying than a real hurricane, and it directly dealt a devastating blow to this hillside. Haruki has a little bit of feet. Chakra injected the attributes of the wind. With the help of the airflow, his body rose, avoiding the angle of ninjutsu. Tsunade's body suddenly swelled, and a towering tree wrapped her around her. The blasting storm blew the tree trunk, like a big knife after another. The extremely harsh sounds continued one after another. The branches fell all the way down, leaving only the bare, carved trunks. But there is no doubt that Tsunade blocked it. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Chapter 126 Kakuzu thinks of the fear of being dominated by wood style, first order. Haru stands in the sky, watching Tsunade and Kakuzu fight each other. In terms of combat experience alone, few people in the entire ninja world can compare to Kakuzu. This is the advantage of living long. Although Tsunade has wood style, he is not her grandfather after all. He has a large amount of chakra and sage body, and his power may be only half. It seems to be incapable of facing Kakuzu. An ordinary ninja, chakra, who can skillfully use both attributes, is already a genius. And Kakuzu has 5 attributes. The most amazing thing is that he is very proficient in each of them, and he has extended his combined attack skills. The compound Ninfa Yangfeng Luanbo, which was just displayed with the wind-style mask and fire-style mask, was so powerful. If it weren't for the clear tree to cover it with the barrier in time, I'm afraid the people in Omi Town would see this flame rising into the sky. He dropped his body and stood in between the two of them. What do you mean? Could it be that words don't count? Kakuzu took a breath. Although he has always had the upper hand with his experience, Tsunade is not too embarrassed, and he didn't even use the 100 healings mark. On the contrary, he faintly noticed that Tsunade's wood style became more and more proficient. He was used as a sharpening stone, naturally counts. Haruki shook his head and said, but judging from your current situation, it is difficult to tell the winner for 3 days and 3 nights. At the end, you are not an opponent when you compete against chakra. It's not over yet, how do you know? Kakuzu was not convinced. The biggest psychological shadow in his life and the wish that he most wants to achieve is to defeat Senju Hashirama. But Senju Hashirama is already dead, so naturally it is impossible for him to go to another world to find him. And Tsunade, as his granddaughter, didn't have wood style before, so he was naturally not interested. Now that I have wood style, I can be comforted by defeating her. But after playing for so long without taking it, he felt angry in his heart. Step aside. Kakuzu's face was slightly dark. Tsunade was the second wood-style user he met, and such an opportunity should not be missed. Haruki gave a soft tusk, and then smiled. Disobedient children how to do. Just a fight. He looked at Kakuzu and clapped his hands. The huge breath of turbulent waves rose to the sky. Black eyeshadow appeared in his eyes for an instant. The combination of natural energy and chakra suddenly disappeared around him, and all the dust and air spread out fearfully. In the looming soil, a seed took root and sprouted. Kakuzu feels trembling in summer. Haruki overlapped with Senju Hashirama at this moment. His complexion was pale, and he stayed stiff. I remembered the fear of being dominated by wood style. A huge wooden dragon rose from the ground. Haruki stretched out his palm and shook it against him. The wooden dragon entangled Kakuzu tightly. Damn it, who are you? Kakuzu felt the breath of death, and he lost his square inch, who had always been calm. Black tentacles appeared constantly on his body, and the four masks wanted to mobilize chakra, but they were horrified to find that all chakra was suppressed by the wooden dragon. Ching Shu stood with his hand in his hand, and Mu Long was cleverly at his feet. He whispered, "You should know the answer to this question." Kakuzu wanted to curse. Really, he was so speechless for the second time in so many years. Are the people in the black market blind or ignorant before thinking of offering a reward for a ninja comparable to Senju Hashirama? No, it's not right, it's his own financial obsession. Come on, I'll tell you everything you want to know. Kakuzu gave up resisting decadently. Compared to Tsunade, Haruki's wood style exceeds the normal range. Even if he has 9 lives, it is impossible to escape such a wood style. His own chakra is passing fast, and it won't take too long before his body will be hollowed out, and there will be nothing left. The corner of Haruki's mouth was slightly raised. He left Kakuzu. Naturally, he valued his experience. Fighting with first generation to survive, until meeting Uzumaki Naruto, Kakuzu has accumulated too much experience in the 90 years. Haruki gained a lot of strength because of the dark blue additions, but he was actually lacking in experience. Just like the original Otsutsuki Kagaya and Uchiha Madara. Both are almost invincible, but Otsutsuki Kagaya has too little experience. Uchiha Madara obviously puts more pressure on the protagonists. It's just a pity that Black Zetsu made a heart-wrenching attack and became the ultimate hitman. Ching Shu snapped his fingers and released Mu Long technique. Senju Hashirama trapped 9 tails with this ninjutsu, and Kakuzu naturally couldn't break free. Kakuzu moved his body silently. Mu Long's super binding force made him very uncomfortable. And the loss of chakra made him weaker. Let's talk to another place. Haruki glanced around, and there was no good place. After filling it up with wood style again, he returned to his residence. The atmosphere along the way is very quiet. Kakuzu didn't expect to fall into wood style's hands again, so he choked silently. Tsunade was shocked. Haruki's previous wood style far exceeded their usual discussions, and she vaguely felt that it was not worse than her grandfather. She felt unbelievable, because in her heart, grandfather is the god of ninja, no ninja can compare. But Haruki seems to gradually take the place of grandfather. However, she quickly figured it out, it's useless to entangle this by yourself. One is a grandfather and the other is a husband, shouldn't you be proud of yourself? And Haruki's strength gave her an unprecedented feeling. Which woman doesn't like a strong and capable man? Haruki poured a cup of tea for Kakuzu. Kakuzu took it, and did not drink it cautiously. Let's talk about it. Be lenient with frankness, strict with resistance. Haruki poured another cup to Tsunade and got her sweet smile. Even the gloom of Kakuzu in the room was dispelled a bit. A few days ago, the amount of your reward on the black market soared to 90 million taels. Kakuzu thought for a moment, then spoke. Haruki finally understood why Kakuzu came. It's not about giving him back the pot or something. But this amount of money is nothing more than the 5 major countries and the 5 major villages. 90 million taels is a price that has not been released on the black market in the country of fire for more than a decade. The last one was Senju Hashirama. He thought of Shimura Danzo for the first time. Interesting. Haruki pondered for a moment, and said, you can understand my abilities by knowing the course of the battle. I have probably already determined who it is. After Haruki finished listening, he nodded slightly. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Kakuzu sighed. He felt that his life was too unlucky and was ruined in the hands of a family of Hashirama. The larger the amount, the more troublesome the ninja who is offered a reward. However, you are a medical ninja. The contrast made me suspicious, so I encouraged the 5 traders to help me test, but Tsunade was by your side. I decided do it yourself. You know the rest. Kakuzu hesitated for a second without reservation, and said, it should be the guy who offered you a reward. He contacted me and said that after killing you, he should tell them how you were fighting. It's him, our pot shadow, Shimura Danzo. There is one thing, it is indeed his biggest suspicion. After all, I took him down some time ago. As a well-known bounty hunter, 90 million taels are in front of him, and he is not called Kakuzu if he is not moved. Do you have anything else? It was almost as he imagined. Chapter 127 Tsunade's compensation. I have already confessed what I should confess, can I go now? Kakuzu noticed that Haruki's attitude was fairly kind, and he was a little relieved. I think of his reputation and image in the ninja world, a gentle and sunny medical ninja. This can't be fake, right? Go? I didn't say let you go. Haruki blew the tea, and the faint smoke made his smile a little hazy. In Kakuzu's eyes, it looked like a grinning devil. His blood pressure suddenly became full. You? Kakuzu was furious and got up, but his voice suddenly weakened in the second half, even a little aggrieved. What do you mean? Kakuzu, I admire you very much. Haruki put down the cup. If it weren't too far away, he should have patted Kakuzu on the shoulder and said this sincerely. And a question mark appeared on Kakuzu's face. Your appreciation for me is to beat me up? Do you have that serious illness? Haruki didn't know that he was ranting about himself frantically, otherwise, he must be taught by a wood clone in the middle of the night. I ask you, how many tens of millions of large reward orders can you receive in a month? Rarely, maybe only once or twice a month on average. Kakuzu was startled slightly and told the truth. In the black market, those who can have tens of millions of rewards are basically important figures in the 5 major villages in the 5 countries, and the number is limited. And assassinating them is extremely troublesome. They are either strong or powerful. They can't stay in a fixed place waiting for you to kill, so it takes a lot of time to complete an order. Haruki nodded. Sarutobi Asuma has only offered a reward of 35 million. In terms of identity and strength, there are not many that can be surpassed. How about I hire you for 30 million 21 months? Haruki held up 3 fingers and said a number that was difficult to refuse. Kakuzu's heart trembled. He subconsciously wanted to agree, but quickly reacted. Although he may not be so stable and safe to make money outside, he is free. If you stay with Haruki, it's no less than a mouse serving a cat as a bridesmaid, asking for money and life. Can I refuse? Kakuzu asked carefully. Yes. Haruki smiled, provided that you beat me. Kakuzu wanted to jump up and hit him in the face with a punch. What is the difference between you and rejection? If I can beat you, I won't sit here calmly and chat with you. Really no discussion? Kakuzu asked after a moment of silence. This is discussion. Haruki shook his head and said. Tsunade suddenly laughed. I don't know why she wanted to laugh when she saw Haruki fooling people seriously. Haruki and Kakuzu suddenly turned to look at her. Ahem, I think of happy things, you go ahead and leave me alone, Tsunade said with a narrow smile. Haruki couldn't help but squeezed her cheek, and Kakuzu's face became more and more embarrassed. Except for facing Senju Hashirama, he has never suffered such a grievance for so many years. What should I do? Kakuzu finally accepted his fate, thinking of vain and stubbornness, and then looking for a chance to escape. Nanny, oh no, kindergarten teacher. Haruki subconsciously said what was in his heart, but immediately remedied it. I have 3 students, young, 3 or 4 years old, and I want to hire you to be their teacher temporarily. In addition, there is Tsunade, who is not very proficient in wood style. Kakuzu has lived for decades and has never heard such an outrageous request. But after thinking about it, I can earn 30 million yuan every month, and it doesn't seem to be a loss. The salary is the 30 million that I told you, but the performance appraisal will be conducted at the end of the month. If the standard is not met, the money will be deducted. What is performance appraisal? Kakuzu was stunned. Simply put, develop evaluation standards for your work to prevent you from raping and skidding. Kakuzu was able to see through the thoughts in his heart, but there was no flaw in his mouth. My Kakuzu's credibility in the black market is well known. It is impossible to do such a thing. Haruki smiled without talking. They're all old foxes, what are you playing with me? And Kakuzu may not know that the few students he faced were all geniuses. Haruki estimated that he would be able to eat up to a few months' salary, and he would have to deduct money later. When Kakashi and Obito grow up, he might have to pay back. Do you have any comments? If not, you will be the teacher I hired from now on. No, also, don't think about running away. If you get caught, it won't be as simple as the first time. Haruki stood up, warned him casually, and opened a room next door for him. Kakuzu glanced at Haruki and entered the room in a mixed mood. You. Tsunade laughed again. She also heard about Kakuzu, but she didn't expect it to be more difficult than the legend. But no matter how powerful it was, Haruki couldn't do a single trick. What's wrong? Haruki sat down again, pulled Tsunade over again, and hugged him in his arms. Humph, you've been lying to me before, haven't you? Tsunade just pressed his head because she was standing, her tone was dissatisfied. It turns out that your true strength is. If you fight under the bed, you must not use your full strength. Haruki leaned on her belly across her clothes, and the soft touch seemed to reveal a hint of fragrance. Can you speak well? Tsunade took a sip, and at the same time, kicked Haruki with her feet. Haruki smiled. If you don't wear shoes, it would be better. Tsunade was startled slightly, but he bounced on his forehead helplessly. This guy is really hopeless. Have you forgotten one thing? Haruki reminded her and said, and you lost me more than 30 million taels. Am I such a person? Tsunade curled his lips and asked, what compensation do you want? Tsunade also felt a little too much. She held Haruki in her hands, and after thinking for a few minutes, she said, how about the hot spring? Tsunade leaned in his arms and looked confused when he heard what he said. Huh? Tsunade subconsciously uttered, and then pointed to the moon outside the window. It's so late, I'll go another day. Ah, what's the matter? Haruki asked Tsunade to sit on her lap and put her arms around her soft and plump waist. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. It's a mixed bath. Tsunade blushed and gave him a white look. No. Haruki crossed her legs with her right arm, and stood up as a princess. Next time you will let me dove again. Now, right now, act. Sure enough, did you say you want to compensate me before entering the casino? Hot spring. Haruki narrowed his eyes. If it's a mixed bath, I'll go. Sniff, it's only 35 million taels. Why are you asking me? Shouldn't you take the initiative? Tsunade has a guilty conscience, but the effort on his lips refuses to admit defeat at all. Oh, Haruki's spirit came instantly. Go now, well, all right. Do you want to fall back on the bill? Haruki smiled. Chapter 128 Hot springs are very common in the ninja world. Jiraiya is a master of hot springs, and hot springs in various countries have been studied. Haruki followed to learn for a while. It was not that he volunteered, but was dragged by Jiraiya. Only after Haruki became Tsunade's girlfriend, he was ruthlessly abandoned. But his experience is still there. With the charm of money, he has secured a hot spring. The warm air permeated. Tsunade sat by the spring, took off his shoes and exposed his white feet. She didn't know if it was the cause of the hot spring. Her face looked ruddy, like a cooked egg. Haruki was soaking in the hot spring, watching her slow movements, couldn't help but shook his head. Do you want me to help you? He beckoned and smiled. I'm quite good at asterisk. Tsunade glared at him, no longer hesitating, and went into the hot spring a few times. But only his head was exposed. She and Shu kept a distance of 2 meters, a pair of eyes afraid to look at him, only staring at the curling mist. What are you doing? As soon as Haruki made a move, she looked wary and hugged her chest. But it is completely useless. I will help you rub your back. Haruki glanced at the white waves, swallowed, and before Tsunade refused, he went around her back. He took out the towel and started wiping. Tsunade stiffened. But the skin quickly turned red. 10 minutes later, Haruki patted her on the shoulder and said, front. No need it. Tsunade shook his head quickly. How can you stop doing things halfway? Haruki turned her body and continued to wipe. Tsunade's face gradually turned red, until it reached the tip of his ears. It was like sunset, and the blockbuster was rendered. Haruki resisted the feeling of exploding and asked, do you know fish therapy? Fish therapy? Tsunade asked subconsciously. Her mind was blank now. Well, a special way of beauty. The little guys known as broodstock can live in hot springs. They can suck bacteria and viruses on the surface of human skin to relieve fatigue and treat pain. Well, it's amazing. Listening to Haruki's words, Tsunade relieved his tension and shame. If you have a chance, you can try it. You can experience it now. Haruki stopped the movement in his hand and laughed. Now, where is the fish? Ah. Tsunade's eyes widened, and he took a deep breath. It's so big, a fish. How about fish spa? Haruki hugged her, the corners of her mouth curled up. Tsunade's breathing was intermittent, and he didn't speak immediately. After a long time, he hugged Haruki tightly. This big guy is too fierce and evil, he only knows to bully people. But I think the effect seems to be good. Haruki looked at the drops of water on her face, forehead and body, and smiled. Sweating represents the effect. Tsunade glared at him weakly, and then shouted, here again. When the time is over, I must catch it. Then you have a good taste. Haruki blinked. I heard that this fish can be eaten raw. Tsunade was taken aback for a moment, and then showed a disgusting expression. I won't eat if I kill you. Taste it, it's very nutritious. Haruki stroked her straightened body. I don't like sashimi, I like to cook it. With a dangerous smile on Tsunade's face, Haruki's scalp numb. But the next second, a crimson appeared on her snow-white cheeks, and her mouth opened silently. Haruki lifted his chin triumphantly. Tsunade's blonde hair was wet from hot springs and sweat, and clusters of hair stuck together. Asshole. I don't believe it, she gritted her teeth and said. Her face was totally unconvinced. Should we make a bet? Haruki suddenly became interested. Tsunade's expression was really interesting. He smiled and said, I'll bet on which of us will get up first tomorrow. What is the bet? When it comes to gambling, Tsunade can't miss it. She can bet on anything, and she doesn't think she will lose. One thing. The one who wins can make the one who loses do one thing. Good. Tsunade took a deep breath, and the water shook. She must kill the big fish. Haruki's face changed slightly. He felt like a lonely boat in a storm, and the huge waves rushed towards him, making him tremble involuntarily. A new day. Uchiha Obito, Hitaki Kakashi and Nohara Lin stood in front of Haruki's room. His eyes rested on the wooden sign hanging on the door. There is a sentence engraved on it. If you have something to do with your teacher, go out with your wife. In the morning, your new teacher, Kakuzu, will give you a lesson. Please listen carefully. New teacher. Obito was a little confused. Where's the new teacher? Had Haruki invited it in the middle of the night? At this moment, the next room opened, and Kakuzu with a gloomy expression appeared in front of the three of them. He was startled slightly, and immediately noticed the content of the wooden sign. But Kakuzu's first reaction was, chance, his chance. He calmly looked at Haruki's three students. The atmosphere is a bit solemn. Finally, Lin Nohara said, "Are you Mr. Kakuzu?" To be honest, Kakuzu's outfit is indeed a bit scary. Kakuzu nodded nonchalantly. Since Haruki has handed you over to me, I will naturally do my duty and follow me. He turned and left the dormitory. The three Obito looked at each other. The teacher seemed a little cold. Although Haruki has a dark belly occasionally, it feels quite sunny and makes people smile unknowingly. But they didn't say anything. Since Haruki asked Kakuzu to be their teacher, it wouldn't hurt them. Kakuzu is very calm on the surface, but his heart beats wildly. His perception spread to ultimate, and he still didn't notice where Haruki and Tsunade were. Is it really something, instead of testing yourself? He left Omi town with a nervous mood. Ms. Kakuzu, where are we going? Kakashi couldn't help asking when seeing them gradually moving away from the town. He instinctively felt that the teacher in front of him didn't seem to be a good person. Flying Thunder God. I'm so stupid, really, I only know that he can only know wood style, I don't know that so can Flying Thunder God. Don't worry, Teacher Chinshu has Flying Thunder God technique and can find us. Obito showed a triumphant look on his face. Do you miss Haruki-sensei? Yo-yo, Kakashi, you also have. Half true. Shut up, idiot. He raised his dull eyes and looked at the blue sky. As for why they were naturally taken as hostages. Kakuzu didn't slow down and took the time to reply. Kakuzu felt bad all over. NS, go to the suburbs to practice ninjutsu. Kakashi glanced at him coldly. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Yeah, Shinshu teacher can Flying Thunder God technique, no matter where you are. You can get there in time, Obito said with a grin. It's real to go to the suburbs. Kakuzu was about to say the phrase, farewell, prison. After hearing these three words suddenly, his body stiffened and stopped in place. If Haruki doesn't come out again, he will take these three little guys away. Chapter 129 System Upgrade. Miyamoto Musashi Haruki opened his eyes. Tsunade's water-stained face squeezed into his sight. He smiled. This little Nizi was really not afraid of death last night and kept launching suicide attacks. It is a pity that his sage body is not afraid of such an offensive. The mods are fighting the fire. The corner of Haruki's mouth evokes a sense of pride, and it seems that he won the gamble. He knows that he will lose every time he gambles, so he loves gambling. He shook his head, and with a long bang, he got up. Haruki opened the door and asked the boss for washing supplies. After he finished the bath, Tsunade woke up leisurely. She frowned, and the tingling around her body was something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Tsunade was paralyzed for a few minutes, waited to regain his spirit, and changed his clothes. Give. Haruki squeezed the toothpaste and handed her the water glass. Tsunade glared at him, and brushed his teeth several times to clean off the odor in his mouth. Haruki leaned against the door, her wonderful figure reflected in her affectionate eyes. The prompt sound of the system appeared in his mind. Congratulations on your first hot spring bath with Tsunade. Considering your current strength, the system will be upgraded. Please wait 2 hours. Close black lens bracket. Haruki was a little surprised. He thought he didn't need the system much anymore, after all, he was short of Rinnegan or Tensigan. But I didn't expect the system to be upgraded. Not bad, there is a sense of crisis. Haruki glanced at the countdown, looking forward to the new functions of the system. After Tsunade brushed his teeth, he took another shower. I come. Haruki hurriedly took the lipstick, bent down, looked at her lips, and then applied it seriously. After Tsunade waited for him to finish painting, he said, now I'm very courteous. Didn't I be courteous last night? Haruki stepped back and looked at her masterpiece. A layer of crystal clear red floated on her lips, a vaguely invisible temptation. When Tsunade heard what he said, he suddenly raised his eyebrows and said angrily, what did you say? I did not say anything. Haruki put away her lipstick, came to her back, and combed her hair. Tsunade smiled helplessly. Really, this guy only knows to bully himself. Haruki tied her a single ponytail, and then tucked the hair around her ears, exposing her ears. The two left the hot spring and came to the street. It was already noon at this time. Boss, 2 bowls of tonkatsu ramen. Haruki took Tsunade and sat down in the corner, putting her hand on her belly. Are you hungry? Hungry. Tsunade grabbed his dishonest hand to the tabletop. Wait for dinner. Haruki propped his head and looked at her with a smile. Tsunade was a little flustered by him, and his eyes drifted away. She looked for the topic and asked, is it going to happen if you give Obito to Kakuzu? No, the 3 of them, no, all 4 of them have the Flying Thunder God technique on them. If something happens, I can rush to it. Haruki smiled slightly, showing a confident expression. If Kakuzu does something stupid, I will let him understand what it means to be suffering in the world. Tsunade nodded. I have to say that the Haruki in front of me exudes a charming aura. She was a little throbbing. Because it was in a ramen shop, the two of them didn't do anything excessive. After eating a full meal, Haruki began to perceive and quickly found the location of the 4 Kakuzu. He grabbed Tsunade, and the white light flashed away. Leaning against the tree trunk, Kakuzu watched the training of the 3 of Obito's eyes immediately. Haruki and Tsunade came into view. Unlucky, his expression was indifferent, and he said, I am teaching your 3 students according to your instructions. Haruki glanced at him, then looked at the 3 of Obito. Their movements did not stop because of his arrival. Yes. I thought you might run. Please trust my professional ethics. Run? You have flying thunder god technique, how'd I run? Just like you were playing with chicken, I met a poison ring that caught you. Kakuzu could only admit that he was unlucky. Haruki noticed his subtle expression, and it didn't break. He stopped talking, watched the training for a while, and asked, have you eaten lunch? No, the 3 answered in unison. Let's go to eat, and then go to the next location. Haruki took them to eat ramen again, and then went straight to the ferry. Next stop, the Country of Iron. The Country of Iron is a rare neutral country and does not participate in the disputes between the 5 major countries and the 5 major villages. Therefore, it is often used as the venue for the 5 Shadows talks. The Country of Iron is also a country of samurai. There is no ninja profession, instead a group of samurai who are good at swordsmanship. But it is not pure swordsmanship. They attach chakra to the samurai sword to increase power and even form sword aura. From Haruki's point of view, it has similarities with Hitaki Tsukumo. The reason why he chose the Country of Iron is Kakashi. Kakashi has become his own student, so naturally he can't be too embarrassed. He possesses the sword skills from Konoha's White Fang, but, except for his father, he has not had a sword confrontation with anyone else. In Konoha village, there is only Hitaki Shumo, a master knife. But it is difficult for father and son to have a life and death crisis, and progress is slow. The Iron Kingdom has a large number of samurai. Its leader, Mifune, is hailed as the legendary Aizen master. The record in the original is also extremely amazing. If Kakashi wants to become a master of kendo, he must go through battle. The vast and boundless sea. A sailing boat headed for the Iron Country under the control of Obito, Kakashi, and Nohara Lin's chakra. Haruki found a fishing rod and caught the fish leisurely. Seeing this scene, Kakuzu couldn't help but complain, fishing on a sailboat, if you can catch it, there will be ghosts. In a previous life, Haruki and his dad were fishing enthusiasts, and they went out on weekends to go fishing together in the reservoir or riverside. Looking at the ocean now, he couldn't help feeling sigh. What he was fishing was not a fish. After half an hour, the system was reactivated. Haruki immediately looked at the introduction of new features. There are 2, one is a reward that can be specified within a range, and the other is a reward that can be given to a close person. As for how to define closeness, the system gives a favorable impression module. Most of the people he knows are here. Tsunade is full 100. Obito is 80, Kakashi 65, Nohara Lin 65, Kakuzu 90. As long as it reaches 60 or above, it can be given as a gift. Haruki touched his chin, but he didn't expect Obito to have such a high degree of affection. Hey, the Uchiha clan is really duplicity. You have not received the reward once, please specify the scope of collection. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket kendo. Close black lens bracket, you get a reward, Miyamoto Musashi Kendo. First class for 2 days. Close black lens bracket. You have reached the Wukong sword realm. Close black lens bracket. Haruki closed his eyes, and countless information poured into his mind. At this moment, he became a swordsman comparable to Miyamoto Musashi. This is Musashi in FGO. Haruki opened his eyes and muttered to himself. He felt that he had an inexplicable mental power. Wukong, ultimate of kendo. Thinking back to the knowledge in my mind. The broad sword is a normal samurai sword, and the small sword is wakizashi. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Kakashi, lend me your short sword. Kakashi showed a puzzled look just like everyone else. This is Miyamoto Musashi's 6 pads 5-wheel Kurigara celestial phenomenon. Haruki held Kakashi's short sword and used chakra to condense Adachi. Fierce and evil, the king of benevolence with 4 arms and 4 swords. Haruki cut out with a sword. Haruki smiled slightly. 2 days first rate, that is, the second sword style, the genre of using big swords and small swords. Haruki stood up. The sky is dim, and the world is divided, and the unique and magnificent sword light soars into the sky. The sea suddenly turned into 2 halves, setting off a wave of hundreds of feet high. A behemoth faintly appeared behind him. The chakra in the body was spinning frantically, and the sea suddenly blew up. Suddenly, heavy rain fell. Teacher, what do you want? Chapter 130. Hero's Water. Haruki squinted his eyes slightly, feeling the beauty of Wukong sword realm. His chakra has not increased, but his strength has been greatly improved. Miyamoto Musashi's 2-day first class belongs to the ultimate of swordsmanship. Any weapon or technique, if contemplated to the depths, is like dripping oil from the money hole of an oil cellar. It is simple and effective, without any waste. Haruki waved his hand to form a chakra shield. The two translucent petals on the left and right of the jingbi with water droplets suddenly collapsed. The sea is rough. The sailboat stood still. Kakashi. Haruki threw his short sword back to him. Kakashi, who was still in shock, almost got a hole in short sword. Fortunately, he reacted. Old teacher, what was that just now? Kakashi hurriedly caught short sword, his eyes still fixed on the stormy sea. Kendo. First class in 2 days. Haruki sat back on his diayutai again and said with a smile, this is what you will learn later. Kakashi's eyes widened, and a smile appeared on his always cold face. The words were full of joy. Thank you teacher, what about me? Obito suddenly became anxious. If Kakashi learns this kind of swordsmanship, wouldn't he be under his sword, like something that can be broken with a single stabbing? I'm afraid it will be difficult to turn over in a lifetime. He yelled. I want to learn too, you are not suitable. Haruki shook his head and rejected Obito's request. His plug-in is Mangekyo Sharingan, essentially a fei, not a warrior. Learning kendo is a waste of time. Besides, not everyone can reach the realm of Musashi. Unless Haruki has the number of gifts. Huh? Obito's face showed disappointment. Your future will not be worse than Kakashi. Haruki comforted him. The inverted seawater finally fell. The sailboat moved on again. Kakuzu sat in the boat without saying a word. He feels more and more that his money is not bright. Haruki is really too mysterious. Like an onion, tears shed sad tears when peeled. Wood style, flying thunder god, kendo. A single one becomes a top ninja, but all in one person. It's terrifying. Kakuzu began to miss the free past. After they left, another ship arrived. The leader is dressed as a samurai, wrapped in a turban, and has a slender beard on his chin. 3 ships. He stared at the sea that had become calm. And in the mental perception that no one can see, there is another picture. Countless sword chi criss-crossed and covered the water. He frowned slightly, and there was a dizziness in his mind. It's like someone pinched his head with a crack in the door. Leader. The inner corner of the same samurai dress next to him was not as high as Mifune, so he didn't quite understand what he was looking at. Mifune didn't speak, and drew the katana. The blue chakra flicked out. In an instant, the tsunami rose again. Under the impact of the waves, the huge steamship slipped back 100 meters. Also at this moment, the other samurai sensed the colliding sword energy in the air, and couldn't help showing horror. But it didn't take long to return to peace. The 3 boats stood on the bow, but they couldn't calm down. He thought he had seen the end of kendo, but he didn't expect it to be halfway up the mountain. Konoha's gloomy underground base. Shimura Danzo looked up the most recent information. Immediately there was a knock on the door. Grown-ups. The root ninja, who was wearing a mask and couldn't see his face, knelt before him. Is there any news from Kakuzu? Shimura Danzo put down the scroll and asked. After being ordered by Sarutobi Hiruzen to resume root activities, he returned to Konoha's peak that day. What excites him most is that he is allowed to shoot Haruki. New and old grudges. It made him want to directly send the roots to assassinate. But Sarutobi Hiruzen may have gossip. Humph, really indecisive. If I were to be Hokage, Konoha would have been great again. There is no way to be inferior to others. Shimura Danzo considered the character of his old partner and found the best bounty hunter in the entire black market, Kakuzu. After reluctantly raising Haruki's reward, Kakuzu finally took the order. Calculating the time, it should be about the same. You got news. The root ninja hesitated and said, we have been following Kakuzu, and he encouraged 5 Hokage rebels to take action with him, but after that a barrier rose. We don't know how the battle is going. He died. Shimura Danzo couldn't help frowning. Kakuzu's record is very beautiful, so he is willing to spend a lot of money. Is it a guy who doesn't want to use it? Not dead. The root ninja looked at him cautiously and said, not only is he not dead, he is also talking and laughing with Haruki. Shimura Danzo was stunned. His expression was wrong. Are you right? No, bastard stuff. Shimura Danzo slapped the desk sharply, and the wooden desk suddenly fell apart. 2 other root ninjas appeared in the air, and they changed to a new desk very skillfully. After he finished venting, he gradually recovered his calm. What the most brutal guy on the black market, this is it. Shimura Danzo shook his head, really unreliable. He tapped the table with his index finger. What should he do next? After a few days of wandering, Haruki and his team set foot on the territory of the Iron Country. The weather suddenly became cooler, as if it had entered autumn. Kakashi. Haruki bought a watermelon casually and threw it to Kakashi. The white knife light flashed away. The watermelon is completely divided into 6 pieces. Haruki looked at the lively port city. Due to its neutral attitude, the Iron Nation has made agreements with the 5 major nations and avoided a lot of wars. On the whole, it is relatively peaceful. He took a bite of the watermelon, hesitated about the next journey. He originally intended to let Kakashi see and see different kendos. The upgrade of the system allowed him to learn Musashi's second class first class. Haruki can teach Kakashi by himself, in no mood. To his surprise, there was a middle-aged man holding a paper fan in the middle hall, telling a story. Haruki's gaze stayed in front of the house. Haruki thought for a while, but didn't leave immediately. He had read the information before, and the metropolis of the Iron Kingdom was in Three Wolf Mountain. Although his cooking skills are good, his 3 meals a day are all fish and meat, which is a bit greasy. Presumably Mifune and others should be here. Life on the ship has been difficult these days. In other words, the country of Taki is composed of many waterfalls, and there are various caves within the waterfalls, and there are many treasures in the caves. I have heard that there is something called the Water of Heroes. I remember you came from Takigakura village, next to the country of Iron. Do you want to drop in and go back for a stroll? Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. For him, Takigakura village is already in the past. After entering, the warm yellow light came into view. It has 3 floors and is beautifully decorated, a bit like an enhanced version of an izakaya. Kakuzu answered without hesitation, and didn't even have time to think. What's more, his acquaintances either died in his hands or were already dead. Speaking of Taki no Kuni, Haruki immediately looked at Kakuzu. But since I'm here, I can't run in vain.